I want to redesign the Beast of NurgleCrab. Do you know what I want the Beast of Nurgle to become? Remove the goop behind it because it's really annoying and not fun. It's never conducive to interesting gameplay. Remove the voring because it's just a frustration generator. It's not fun. And what you do is you make the beast like a ranged spewer that like tries to come at you to vomit on you. And it spawns enemies. It's like a spawner. It spawns like flies, it spawns poxwalkers, it spawns plague bearers. And like the more you damage it, the more aggressive he is. Yes, we're on voice. Join Goon Cave. Well, actually, you have Goontown access, I think. You're Goontown worthy. You should be. Are you not? Hold on.
I thought he always had access to this.
Yeah. Pretty sure we were in Goontown together at one point. There he is. Kissing Chamber. Hi, Crab. How you doing? I'm restarting.
Yep.
Just wiping to instant deaths for 3 hours straight.
Hell yeah. Yeah, Beast of Nurgle. The thing about the Beast of Nurgle is that their original idea was just for it to deny space. So the idea of the trail is just like wherever it's been, it's kind of like Snake. You can't go where it's been.
Yeah, but that's a really bad idea.
Well, but I think that the thing about it is that it needs to be a pressure sponge, and I suggested exactly that, which is like, but I feel like what I would want it to do is to spawn like Nurglings or something.
Yes,
you know, like
absolutely.
it would like eat a zombie and then spit out a Nurgling, and also make it so that it gets more dangerous if you let it get near other high level enemies, because it can turn them into fucked up stuff. So it's like you're trying to position it relative to other enemies.
I wanted it to be like a big like buff generator enemy slash enemy spawner, because when you think about it, this thing is kind of like an armored vehicle. It's like a troop transport, right? But all disgusting and shit. Because the way it works right now, it's incredibly frustrating to deal with in melee. It's not fun to try and get with ranged because it doesn't have a frontal weak spot, and trying to get behind it is a nightmare. It will constantly just like do the most frustrating shit, like you backslide to avoid the spew, and the spew somehow backsplatters onto you when you're like on its tail. So now you can't engage with the boss because otherwise it's a hard disable slash instant death, which is never fun. So
the thing about the Beast of Nurgle, and this is something that I pointed out to them, which is that like for an enemy like this, if it's fundamentally designed to be mostly invulnerable from the front, everything it does has to give you an opportunity to do something. So anytime it threatens you, that has to also be an opportunity. And so my suggestion was, if it's going to vomit, you should be able to throw projectiles into its mouth. If it's going to, it should have a melee attack where it extends its tongue, and if you dodge it, you can hit the tongue.
And get out of the eat war animation. Like you can defend yourself against
stuff like
it.
that.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so the basic idea is just that you make it so that, because the problem is that with stuff like that, if it only presents a threat, it's like you're playing a game where you get nothing or you get slapped.
Yeah.
It's no fun.
It's like the Beast of Nurgle, this is the thing that comes up the most, is that no situation is made more fun or engaging or like genuinely difficult by a Beast of Nurgle being there. It is always, always, always like annoying and or frustrating, even when you come out on top, even when you win. And you never want an enemy that's designed like that.
But I think, a flip side of that is stuff like, if you make it so that you kill it, if the explosion it did was really dangerous to other demons, stuff like that, then you get a benefit for killing it near other enemies, that kind of stuff.
I mean, I think the benefit should also just be like it stops spawning the stuff that it started spawning. Like if we make it into troop transport, that would kind of be an inherent thing. Like, okay, we've now like seriously alleviated pressure.
But I just mean more generally, it's just like there's just not enough interaction with it. It doesn't behave very much.
Yes. Yeah, you can't play with it. There's no gameplay. Like it's the fucking boss equivalent of a Bullwark. And speaking of Bullwarks, have you seen and or heard my proposals, and have you seen Miguel Iglesias' concept art for the Bulwarks?
I haven't seen his concept art. No,
check stream right now. No, check this stream right now. I'm showing it because it's basically.
I can't see it. It's just your guy in the.
Yeah, it will catch up. Bulwarks need to have their shield be smaller, have an accurate hitbox.
Okay, so I can tell you the version I've pitched.
Yeah.
The version I've pitched is quite simple. If they want them to have as much frontal invulnerability as they have, give the shield tank skirts that are extendable. And when they're far away from you, they have a skirt on their shield that is wide. They don't have the force field anymore. The shield hitbox is the hitbox, but they hold it up and they walk towards you, and when they get in melee, they close the skirt, and they put the shield down, and they're no
And they're
longer
aggressive.
invulnerable. Yes, and the idea is that instead of having like a 4k HP bulwark, you have an 8 to 9k HP bulwark that's much more aggressive. It doesn't one-shot you, but it's quite disruptive in melee. It applies quite a lot of stun and stagger if it's next to you.
Which
And
is
so the
what it
idea
should
is that
do,
it's
yeah.
actually a line breaker. And it's not replacing a crusher, because a crusher is like, it one-shots you with an overhead, whereas the bulwark is like, it protects people while it's coming in because it just covers a big square, and then when it's close to you, it stops doing that. It's like a phase thing, and it also means if someone closes with it, they stop it from being a problem. So like, if someone's being aggressive in melee and they push it, it stops being a problem for the rest of the team. That would be my pitch. And also give them a melee moveset. Like,
Yes,
make them
because
actually do
their
stuff.
animations are all horrible currently.
Oh yeah, the shield bash needs to go. It doesn't do anything. It's pointless. They need to
Yeah,
have...
it does. It does. It's an instant interrupt on revive.
Oh, it's
That's what it
not
does.
It's not an instant interrupt. If you're holding block, it drains your stamina. But what I mean is that it like, for most of the time, if you're doing most things, it doesn't do any damage. It just annoys you.
It frustrates you. Yeah, it's a stun.
And it doesn't have like a wind up.
No, it's
the thing-
horrible.
Yeah, and the thing about it too is like, and this is a common problem across most of the melee elites. Like Rages have 4 combos. I think I'm probably the only person in the world who can tell you the difference between them. And the answer
Yes.
is there isn't a difference between them, because from the player's point of view, they are all identical. They all are undodgeable, they are all uninteractable, they all have a massive hitbox, and unless you have the funny stop them acting... Because basically, like, the problem with the Rager is that the Rager doing anything is a failure state.
Yes.
And so what that means is you stun lock them, and that's the only way to engage with them.
Or
you
you
one-shot,
dodge
that's it.
back and get gun out.
Yeah,
Because
exactly. Or
even
shoot
if you
them.
have if you have a tool that's like, I will now stop them to hit them. If you have like fucking 7 of them, it's like, okay, I know I don't have a choice anymore. Like I can't dance around them. I can't time my dodges. I can't do shit.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, no, and I mean, so like I have quite an extended pitch for the Rages. But the thing about the Rages is I think you can actually turn them into something decent with the animations they currently have.
Yes.
Like, one of their combos is 7 hits long. And they can't move that much while they're doing it. It's like, there's no reason for this guy to have a 7-hit combo. Give him longest 3 or 4 like hits, and make it so that it's like, instead of making it undodgeable, just say, this swing, you can dodge left. This swing, you can dodge right. This swing, you have to block it. And make it so that if you perfect block, timed block, like 300, 400 MS.
This would break
Two
if
swings
there's
in it.
more. This would break if there's more than one.
Oh no, but
immediately.
this is the trick. If you make it so that you can also block, then if there's 2 of them, you're having to do a 2-layered defense. You're dodging and blocking at the same time. So that's something you can overcome with skill. And then 3 or 4 rages, failure state. And so the idea here is you then say, okay, now we're no longer spawning 12 of them.
Yeah, but I'd rather they just make it like in V2 where you can just dodge around them and keep attacking. You just have to like be careful about it, and like you're taking a risk. Like directional dodges were tried with the spawn. It was a failed experiment. Let's not do that
No,
again.
but I mean but that's just because the spawn. I mean the way I'd put it is, the spawn doesn't work, but I think for different reasons. It's not the direction aspect of the spawn that doesn't work. It's just that the baseline properties of the attacks are basically just designed so that you can't actually judge when you're, because you know how when you're quite close to the spawn, you are gonna get hit whether you're dodging or not because you're inside the dodge catch.
Yeah.
And like
And
it's
that
really...
distance is ridiculous. Like he'll get you from his, like if you're behind him or like to like your left, he'll
And
wrap
the spawn
around to
moves.
get you. It's
He
it's-
slides while he's attacking, right? And so it's
Yeah,
like,
he
you
does like a
can't-
little hunch forward when he does the grab. It's horrible.
Exactly. And like, you can't... in that case, it's like, what you're expecting the player to do, if you wanted them to actually directionally dodge that, is like, calculate how far away they are in their head, and then decide what the appropriate defensive response is while they're under pressure. Not going to happen. But if it's completely consistent, so that essentially you're saying, if I dodge left, there is no dodge catch, then it has 2 effects. The first thing is, it means that you are still able to interact with the enemy, and it still punishes what... Because the original idea for rages, when I asked them why rages were like this, they basically said, well, the idea is rages are meant to punish dodge spam. And so my thing was like, well, make it directional then, because that way you have to think about the dodge. You can't spam dodge. Make it tight, but like don't just make it so that they ignore dodge entirely, because...
Because then
For
it
most-
leads to like the most degenerate thing as well, which is just
Yeah,
you just gun
well,
them
it's
down. Like you've effectively
destroy
made an
direction.
enemy that like
Yeah.
you can't engage with in melee, so we won't engage with it in melee.
Exactly, and I think the other thing too is that, you know... This
Oh
game
no,
is
the
really...
rod, I've done it.
What's he done?
I've done a U.
Oh no.
Has to happen eventually.
Oh, well, I mean, come on, this is good. That's how you know. That's how you know you're popping off. But I think the other thing, and this is something that I want to emphasize in general, is I think that blocks should be more important in the game in general. It's an entire half of your melee interaction, in the sense of like, if you think about, you know, it's the other fucking button, right?
Yeah.
And for most weapons, most of the time, your primary use of blocking is to cancel your attack.
Yep.
And I think in particular stuff like rages, timed blocks, I think,
Spawn
are
behind
really
us.
good. And I know that people have bad associations with timed blocks because of Vermintide 2, but the analogy I would bring here is like, hitting the timed parry is fun. It can be a little bit off on ping, but I think it's probably
generous enough that it's mostly fine, honestly. It's like what, 200 ms?
I think it's 300, but that's as low as
Yeah.
I'd want to go, basically. Because I think that's the thing, is this game is not Devil May Cry, right? You're not trying to hit timed. It just needs to be difficult enough that you could potentially fuck it up under pressure, right?
Exactly.
And I think
that's the exact level of complexity we should have with like timed inputs.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is the idea with rages, is that the idea is one rager by itself. The first thing is, I want them to shut down the implicit movement that happens in a lot of animations, where the enemy is basically, they have a hidden kind of movement where they slide towards you during an animation where it doesn't match up to what they're doing. And rages have some of that in some of their attacks. They have one attack which that chases. And the second thing I would do, by the way, if I want to make blocking more important, the other thing I would do is I'd make it so the block delays are reduced or removed on almost all weapons. There's
like delays to go into block, yeah.
Into and out of. Like, at the moment, there are a bunch of weapons that have at least 0.25 seconds or more, and I know why it's there. It's to make weapons like, the heavy sword, which has an instant block. It's to make it feel more like a kind of a swordsman's weapon. But in reality, it's just like, people already don't want to block. You don't need to make it worse. And I think the thing about stuff like rages is I would make it so 2 consecutive time blocks at any rager combo stagger up. And
Yeah, Kiri, like blocking has always been like the lowest priority action like ever in tag games. That's normal, but
yeah.
I think rewarding it by like having time blocks, and like let's say you could like break someone's combo. Like, okay, this rager's on me. I time my block. Now he's like staggered back a bit. Not completely stunned, like a low stage of stagger enough that I can stun him further if I follow up with an attack. I think that'd be interesting.
Stagger resistance and stuff, yeah. And I think the key thing is just like, because one of the really cool things about the way Darktide's defensive gameplay works, which is never actually emphasized, is that you can block while dodging. And obviously that was in Vermintide, but I mean in Vermintide it was just a safety thing, like you always block while dodging. But in this it's like, if you have multiple rages...
No! I did not know that dog was that close to me. I'm dead instantly.
No.
I heard him spawn, but I thought he was much further away. It's okay, easy res, I'm right here.
Well, so the thing about time
It's
block,
still there.
time block is not a parry. So there's a couple of different things about. So the Devil Claw parry is actually kind of bananas. Like I had a lot of, when I was getting them to fiddle with it, then I was thinking about what it would have to be in order to make weapon class usable. Because think about Devil Claw, right? The Devil Claw is one of the few melee weapons in the game that doesn't have the ability to kill carapace really well at all.
Yeah, but I think this is kind of where we should be in terms of carapace damage. Like, it's just ridiculous how we flatten carapace with the weapons that are good at it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But of all the things that flatten carapace, I would want melee weapons to keep more of their power than ranged weapons.
Yes, I think ranged obliteration of stuff in general needs to go like way the fuck down. Like range is so dominant. I'm dead instantly here. Yeah. I'm playing really bad. I'm sorry.
No, it's because I've joined and I'm rambling at you, so I'm distracting you with.
I don't want to record this one. I'm not recording this one.
But like,
I think
record it.
No, I'm done.
He refuses to record.
I'm so done, dude. I've had such a bad fucking day today, man. It's unreal.
Is it just been a lot of Darktide moments?
Yeah, just like the game just doesn't spawn enough enemies, man. It's just not fun to play at all. You want to just restart this one?
Frankly, I've not played Darktide in like 2 or 3 months, just because I've had a burnt out test, and I was just like, you know what, taking a 2 or 3 months break last time was really good. I'm just going to take a break. They're not going to do anything over Christmas, and then I'll just come back, and when test restarts, I'll start playing again. Because
winning move. Nothing's been going on live anyway. You're not missing out on anything. The twins were terrible. The Orthos offensive was terrible. The new map is terrible. So
Yeah, that's
the sound is worse than ever. So you're really not missing anything.
Well, the twins are kind of my bad because I was kind of off test, and I felt like I should have tested them, but I didn't test them.
Oh yeah, dude.
I was just like,
I don't think anyone either put any thought or tested them.
Well, I think that the part of the problem is that they're based on the captain, and the captain isn't really very thought through.
You know what I like? I like the Tox Mines. I think that's a cool idea. The problem is it was attached to an asshole that had a hit scan, plasma gun, that instant stripped your toughness into stun, into push, with desync between the wind up and the shot. So, you know, not great.
I think the thing about the plasma gun too is that the plasma gun looks like it suffers. His plasma gun sometimes looks like it has some of the problems that snipers have, where it doesn't queue properly.
Yeah, it just silently shoots. Yeah, like it just there's no wind up and it shoots. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't have a laser. It's only a sound tell. You can only tell where he's pointing it by his angle, and sometimes that's wrong because there's desync between your client.
And he switches instantly anyway.
Yeah, exactly. But I think when he switches instantly, what that sometimes is your client wasn't told that he's changing direction. And so you just get told, oh, he's actually shooting in this direction.
I mean, it's also like, even if you're not looking, it's like, okay, he's shooting at somebody else. And then suddenly you get blasted and you're stunned into, like, death. Because there's no aggro sound. Like, there's no way... I got unpushed. I hate when the game does that.
Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, I think the boss fights in general... And I think this is the other thing, is you need... like, there's lots of stuff about... Because you know how, like, often people feel like this game has less complex melee than Vermintide?
I think that's no longer true after the big patch.
Well, but it
I mean, in terms of, like, the movesets and the weapons, it's no longer true. But in terms of, like, how you interact with enemies, yeah, that's absolutely true, just because most enemies in this game are really badly designed. Like the Rager, the Bulwark that we went over are horrible. You look at the Groaners, they just serve no purpose. We lost the entire enemy types, like where's my light elites, like my Stormvermin likes? Where are my shields that aren't Bulwarks? Where, like, seriously, like Direct Bruisers should be redesigned to be like an in-between of a melee elite and like a melee trash, because currently they're just like regular dudes, but they will clap your toughness, which is really weird. Like, there's always a disconnect in my brain between how non-threatening the Bruiser looks and how it actually claps you really hard.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was partly, like, a lot of people on test don't like the idea of increasing the HP of stuff.
Of increasing what?
The HP of a lot of stuff, and in my view, you don't want to globally increase the HP of a lot of stuff, but certainly for most melee, for all the Ogre enemies, you could double their HP and reduce the spawn count by a third, and you would instantly improve that. Because of all the enemy types, like if you think about it thematically, right? A Bulwark only has like 4 or 5 times the HP of a Bruiser. In practice, against a lot of damage types.
Oh Jesus!
And you know, of all the enemies where you could make them spongier, the Ogre enemies should be spongier. Like, that's literally the lore about them, is that they are really, really hard to kill.
By the way, we've had this problem before of Crushers, like, only on paper having more health, because it turns out they don't have that much HP, but they have armor. And it turns out the stuff that's really strong in melee fucking ignores armor. So, you know, GG, like, goodbye, you're dead. Like, we had a boss in Vermintide 2 called Bodvar Rib Spreader, and another one called Scarrick Spine Mangler. They had no health, but they had armor, so you could just walk up to them with boss skill carriers and end the fight in like 5 seconds. Just like instantly delete them.
The first time I fought that boss on Cataclysm, I was playing Shade with the silly sword, and I did the overhead, which has like really good armor penetration. I was like, oh, that doesn't seem like...
Instantly dead. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just, that doesn't seem quite right.
Yeah.
So obviously I told my team I'm a professional gamer.
But I think like for the Bruisers too, like it's not about increase the HP. It's like make them different. Make them able to spawn either with a two-handed weapon or a shield, and give them like a little bit more health, but also make them bigger, make them stand out more.
Oh, yeah,
like once again, there's like pretty good Miguel concept art about that. Like that shows kind of exactly what I want.
But basically, at the moment, one of the things is that most of these enemies are effectively like first pass. And I don't mean it in a rude way, I just mean like, you know how the game...
No, the game's not finished. Like, it's not even a mean thing to say. Like, it's clearly just not finished, even on a conceptual level.
Yeah, and so with one of the big things, and so this is something that is... Because there's a lot of what I would think of as being quite high level and vague things that I want to do where it's not immediately obvious why it's so important, but one of them is, at the moment, and this is something you can test, if you go into the meat grinder, spawn a bunch of bruisers. They do have a sound tell for when they attack, but the timing of the sound tell and the hitbox of the attack hitting you is not consistent. And one of the things, like, all good melee action games, like, I once did this as a test because a friend told me you could do it. So I used to play a lot of Devil May Cry 3, and he said, if you blindfold yourself, you can play the first level of Devil May Cry 3 and no-hit it. And I did it. And the reason is that every single enemy in that game has a 100% consistent relationship between the sound they make when they attack and the timing of that attack's hitbox on you.
Darktide is just in general, like, I think, really bad about that, just simply because the sound cues just often fail to play.
Oh, well, but it's not just that the sound cues fail to play. Even if they do play, it's wrong.
Yeah.
Because they have different yells, the yells have different pitches, and they play at different times, and they last different durations, and their attacks have different, like, it's all basically...
And it's the same with the backstab sound. It doesn't trigger, like, at the same time for all attacks, and sometimes it triggers when you get hit. It's just like, Jesus fucking Christ.
Backstab sound, there is a reason for that is quite hard to avoid, which is, in some cases, the backstab sound is a sanity check. So it's like, your client hasn't been updated about something, or there's a mismatch between your client and the server, which is unavoidable, even in perfect dev code. And so it's giving you the backstab sound late, but the alternative would be no backstab sound at all.
Yeah.
And that's not saying that it should be like that, but it's just like, from my point of view, that's something you can't avoid. But what you can do is, if you have sounds where the sound has a 100% consistent relationship with the impact, and you can play the sound starting partway through, even if you clip off the start of the sound, your brain still knows where you are in the action. And
yeah,
that's
something you don't really think about often, but yeah, like, that's also a fucked up thing.
And that's one of the things this game doesn't have. This game doesn't, as far as I can tell, and I need to talk to some people about this, it doesn't play sounds starting
Interesting.
No. And that's been a major issue. And you see this.
You will always get the whole sound. Like, it's like even the backstab sound. Like,
exactly.
When it plays late, it's not like you catch the end of the backstab sound. It's like the whole thing just plays late, and you're completely right.
Exactly. And it comes back to this netcode model. This netcode model is really about what you choose to synchronize and how hard you choose to synchronize it and when. So I think they're over synchronizing, like, melee state animations. And the reason why you notice this so much in this game is, like, you know, if you're playing Overwatch or something, right?
What do you mean by over synchronizing melee animations?
Okay, so you know how when you're lagging, your actual attack animation itself will rewind by like 100 milliseconds?
Yeah, same when you get stunned, like right there, like it just janks your fucking animations real hard. Yeah.
And so this is basically what's happening there is, it's your client and the server have an internal model of where your character's state is, and when you mismatch, the server is like, actually you're at this stage of the animation, and then your client has to correct it. Now, from my point of view, this is
It does the same thing with position, by the way, which is why when you get shot around, you get just kind of micro teleported everywhere. It's because of that. Yeah. It's horrible.
Do you want to hear a funny story about that? So have you played Tarkov?
No, thankfully.
Okay, so Escape from Tarkov. When they first made the game, their server code had a thread issue where it would hang for 500 milliseconds. And they couldn't figure out how to fix this. And their solution to this was, well, the problem is if we release the game like this, everyone is constantly rubber banding, because every time it happens, you just like hang in place for 500 milliseconds and get teleported. And this is unacceptable to play. Like, if this happens every 5 minutes, you lose your mind. And so their solution to this was to silently make player movement entirely client-side with a small number of sanity checks. And people thought that it was server authoritative fully for player position, until they started testing it, and everyone was getting different answers, because all their clients were reporting different stuff. And you know, the reason for this was just for precisely this reason, which is they were choosing between consistency of basically how it felt for the player. My view is that there are some things this game doesn't synchronize hard enough. Enemy animations are one of them, as you've seen with the the T-posing crusher, not T-posing. Like
no animation crusher or desynced overhead. Like his weapon is in the air and the hit happens. Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's an example of where, like, I need to talk to the netcode guy at some point. I don't know if I ever will, because basically they're programmers who are actually like not bad. I think it's the other thing too is that.
I don't know, did Jasper look through the code and he seemed to be crying because he's like a professional software engineer and...
Yeah, but I mean that's just like people looking at Lua game dev stuff. Like, you know, it's like if you work in professional dev, you look at game dev stuff and you're like, what? Like, there's two classes of game dev code, right? There's like scripting for gameplay stuff, which is like always a nightmare tangle of spaghetti, which makes every proper programmer shit the bed. And then there's like the cache optimized renderer written in C by some dude who knows entirely too much about shaders. And that's when normal devs look at it.
The stuff you'll just never see.
Exactly. But yeah, it's, you know, I'm not saying that the code in this game, but I just mean, you know, if you think about, for example, where the hit rate is now, it's pretty decent. And for a studio that went from doing a non-first-person shooter game from the point of view of having like proper first-person shooter mechanics, I actually think the shooting in this game, this is going to sound fucked up, but if you take a step back, the shooting in this game is actually pretty good at the moment.
It's awful, but it's shockingly competent compared to my expectations of it.
Well, but also what I would say is, if you think about the specific weapons that are bad, they are bad because of what you would call parameter issues. So if you think about the bad recoil on the guns, I could fix that in 20 or 30 minutes with hands on the tools.
Oh yeah, I could do that too. It's not like a deep problem, yeah.
Exactly, and that's what I mean. It's like the core structure of it. Even stuff like stage reloads, and it's like, again, the stage reload's perfect, but most games don't even bother with that at all. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
There's a bunch of stuff in it, and I remember, so this is the other thing too, is that this game was in development a long time ago. And you know how everyone used to be obsessed with the quote-unquote gun feel of Destiny? I am actually surprised by how much better the gunplay is in this than Destiny 2, and a lot of people will be like, what the fuck are you talking about? And I'll be like, okay, so...
No, Destiny's gun feel is terrible. If anyone says that, they don't know what they're talking about. Destiny has horrid gunplay.
See, the thing I like about this game is that the thing that a lot of people... because the guys who did Destiny did this like GDC talk in 2017, 2018 maybe? Where they were talking about like the various different ways that they made Destiny feel like it has good guns. And a big chunk of it was bullet magnetism. You know, the welfare headshot stuff, right?
Yeah.
And every other game that has been developed with that consciously in mind has had bullet magnetism and everything. Darktide is restrained and only has it on the revolver and the plasma gun, and in brackets, I'm pushing for them to remove as much of it as possible from the revolver. I think...
Yeah, the revolver should be a precision weapon.
Yeah, if you're going to reward people, as much as the revolver currently rewards you, how about making them actually have to aim with a weapon that's a dead eye up type back?
It's not a reward, it's welfare.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you should have to aim. Like, if the gun's going to be a cannon...
Make it a skill cannon.
To be fair, Rafik, it's technically what's called trajectory assistance, and all it means is just that it shoots a really, really fat raycast that specifically only detects headshots, hitboxes. So, you know, the enemy has like an afro, and you can hit that afro.
It's the afro zone.
Yeah, exactly. You hit him in the throat, which, you know, is realistic if someone hurts your throat. But this is why the revolver feels so good to use, is just because, well, partly why it feels so good to use, is just that, you know, you crack off a slightly, not really sure that should have hit, but thanks, game.
I actually, it doesn't feel good to me. I hate that. Because I'm like a gamer, and so I know I didn't hit that shot, and the game gave it to me, and it feels horrible. It feels wrong. It's terrible. Like, I'm sure for the average, like for Timmy playing on a controller, it feels awesome. For me, it feels horrible.
Okay, so Shizuka, to be fair, I'm just going to clarify. There are lots of things about Destiny that are really, really good. Like, the sounds of a lot of the guns are really good, the animations are great, the presentation...
When the enemies die, it's great, except in PvP.
Yeah, exactly. Like, the enemies have really strong hit responses. That's one of the things I want them to change about this game too, is there's a bunch of enemy feedback, which, you know, for example, with the chain axes, and I still haven't managed to get this done, but one of the things I wanted them to do was, like, basically, you know how the chain axe is, like, scraping the enemy? I wanted it to be a gout of blood coming out of the enemy along the axis of the chainsaw, so you feel like you're pulling the blood out of them in the direction of the... You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, we can go even further, man. They have the Gore system to do it. I would say, like, make chain weapons have, like, specific wounds when you rip and tear parts of them. Like they do kind of for force sword specials, like, you know?
Oh, 100%. But this is basically, I was talking to the animator, and I was just like, you know, the big thing about the chain axe is, like many axes, you're hitting downwards in the neck region. It's like that classic cleaving zone where you're striking down at the collarbone, which apparently was a standard thing to do with axes. And that's where a lot of the animations come in. And I was like, you really need to add diagonal bisections.
Yes, I mean, I think we need more, like, a big dismemberment. One thing I've always wanted, even back in V2 for, like, the Chaos Warriors, and I want to hear for Crushers, is, like, if I shoot you in the head with, like, my fuck-off critted rended slug, like, the helmet should have, like, a massive hole in it. Yeah, there should be, like head modifications. And I think, like, all the big enemies need more, like, subtle deformation. Like, not hard dismemberment, like, the head is gone, but the head is severely mutilated.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And there's actually, I assume they can do this, but in quite a lot of games, it's quite easy to do like a negative mesh extraction where you just like tunnel a hole through something. And I think in something like this, certainly for like if you get a crit kill with a revolver on an enemy's chest, they should have a thing where it just tunnels a hole straight through them and they collapse. Yes. That kind of thing. Yeah.
No, like I said, that's exactly what I have in mind. Like you've got the hand cannon out, and you pop the crusher like in the top of the head, and it just like blows a hole through it, and there's like a metal cracking sound that you should hear.
Yeah, yeah.
Like to signify it.
This is what I really want to do with brittleness. It's like the thing about rending is like, the new rending system is okay for one very specific purpose, and that very specific purpose is you want a gun to do guaranteed damage under a certain trigger condition. That is the only case where it's okay to give it to someone, and it should only ever be on the weapon itself, in my view. It should never ever be on like the character as a passive, for the reason.
Well, yeah, of course. Like the rended bleed, the rended dodge, it's absurd.
Well, but there's also the other thing about it is this, and this is something that I did point out, but people I don't think appreciate the point of, and this is actually why I'm annoyed that the bolter had its flak boosted to 1. And I know like a lot of people still don't think the bolter is good. In brackets, they're wrong. But
oh yeah, there's a constant Reddit threads crying about it.
I don't understand how people can look at the current bolter in its current state with surgical and deadshot and all the other things that you can get with it and be like, this weapon is bad.
Oh.
Okay, it's not the best in a panic. But
I saw that. That was very funny.
Anyway,
oh, he's dead.
But basically, what I would want is for brittleness to be per hit zone, and to have a clear signal. So like, if when you hit
I mean,
the arm,
it needs to be actually just not like a number reduction of, okay, now your multiplier, your ADM is boosted against the enemy type of. Fuck off with that. I want to strip the armor, physically shooting to remove a shoulder pad. That's what I want.
I agree, but this is. I always try and pitch things that don't require asset
Yeah,
changes.
I know. I was the same in my map
and
redesign
just-
document. It's like a pipe dream thing.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
Exactly.
That's what it should have
So
been.
I agree, and I think that one of the things, for me, the halfway house is basically, you make it so that brittleness no longer applies globally to the enemy. You make it per hit zone, which is doable because you have the per hit zone stuff, and it obviously detects the hit zone because
Of course.
of other reasons. The first thing is you have much clearer sound cues. For when you're striking an enemy. At the moment, they do have a sound
whoops.
cue at like 20% damage effect
Oh, well.
for bullets and stuff. Like they change sound.
Yeah, like
but I
you're
would
actually
make it
doing
just
damage.
so that-
Finally, thank God.
Yeah, because the key thing is that there's two things about brittleness. The first is you as a player need to know when an enemy is brittle. So the first thing is you need a visual cue, because there's no visual cue at the moment. So that means surface display on the armor piece that's affected. They have the Gore system that works on the body. It'll work on the armor plate. Make it so that it looks like
Just
it's getting
design a
broken,
couple like damaged model of like arm, leg, or whatever, and just like have it be
Exactly.
replaced by that when it reaches a certain stage. You have a very easy solution.
Yeah, and then the second thing is max brittleness. You make it so that attacks that hit it that are having their damage boosted substantially make like a crunchy extra noise.
Oh yeah, like the
that-
kind of sound that makes you want to keep hitting it.
Exactly, and so it's like you don't need to be keeping track. You don't need a debuff map.
You
You're just
know
like,
that you're
oh,
doing damage,
Exactly, and it also
and it
means
feels
that-
good.
Yes, and the second thing is all sources of brittleness need to be removed from like there's some fun stuff that comes from how global a lot of the bonuses are, but it just robs a lot of mechanics of any significance when you can just tag an entire pack with bullshit. It's like,
Yeah.
if I want to remove, and this is why like I like the melee application of armor strip for commando, but it just doesn't matter at the moment because
Yeah.
you never, because you know like that's
Because you just grab onslaught with a columnist, and like the crusher is dead before you even have a chance to exploit weakness.
Oh,
I even
yeah,
like
but
the name, like exploiting the weakness. Like it sounds like so cool thematically.
Yeah, and I think the other thing about that too is like the Columbus doesn't need onslaught to do this, and this is another thing that I want to get removed. Crits have a floor value for how much damage they do, which is essentially free rending. So it's like if you have a gun with 0% pen versus carapace, it has a minimum value for the finesse damage that it deals, which gets multiplied up. A 0.
Oh my god,
So this-
swap weapon! There's also, quickly, there is a very, very, very nasty input bug that seems to affect blitzes more than anything else. I sometimes just cannot swap to assail, and it like takes me 5 tries like right here to swap to assail.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. That's
Jesus
what
Christ.
I have a clip of exactly that with a sail and a shotgun that I've sent.
Also,
There is-
tactical axes, heavies fail to queue sometimes. Like heavy one on tax 2, it's like the crusher.
100%.
Yeah.
Don't worry, Commissar Tier is on that one.
Blessed.
He is blessed based.
I love him.
I have been on a rampage to get him to hire him. Like he.
Why not you? Hire me, dude! I'll redraw their maps. I'll redraw every bad event in the game.
Well,
For
no,
free.
but specifically because the Tier. I asked him what he would like to do, and he said I would like to work in QA. And I was just like, this is the most literally what he wants to do is to sit there and break Darktide and report it. He doesn't want to be a developer. He wants to test it and break things. Sorry, when I said a sail and shotgun, I was high. What I meant was a sail and infantry auto run, because I had another clip with a shotgun. I'm sorry. I have been pushing for shotguns on what you call it, Psykers, and I think there's a bunch of reasons why it would be awesome. In particular,
I mean, we need less weapon restrictions. Put chain axe on Psyker. Put dueling swords on everyone. Put dueling swords on everyone. Shotguns on everyone.
So my suggestions were in order. I said give Zealot recon lasguns. It's the close range lasgun variant. There's literally no reason they shouldn't have it. Give veterans dueling swords, because they're literally officer weapons.
But also Zealot, because I don't know, just give it to them.
Well, I was because basically what I think was the problem is that initially in beta they basically felt they didn't have enough class distinction because there weren't that many weapons, and so they removed some weapons to increase the sense that the classes were different.
But now we have 3 fucking skill trees worth of class differentiation, so it's no longer needed.
And way more weapons. And I just think that the other thing about shotguns is that shotguns have this really awesome identity, especially the Lawbringer, of being this like weird debuff utility gun, where you can use it to just like put a bleed on a whole pack. And the idea of running like, you know,
Squares Gaze Man Stopper, dude, let's go.
Bleed, Lawbringer, perilous, like, you know, double dot nonsense, whatever. And you get like all those stacks, because like the Lawbringer special would give you full stacks of your guaranteed crit. And then you also have scatter shot and but yeah, and I think that is like, and the other thing too is that one of the Psykers is a cop.
Yeah,
and
it makes no sense. I mean, he used to have it in the beta, and then he just took it away.
And so it's one of those changes that I really, really wanted to do, because it's also one of those ones that gets you so much free well-being. So not well-being, goodwill, right? Because if you're a Psyker player and one day this is the patch where it's like you can now use shotguns, have fun. It's just like, hell yeah,
time to grind them for 6 months.
Exactly. It's just such a great feeling, and I think that one of the things that they've been much better at, and I think this is something that, even though Patchlock have their issues, I think that their approach to my major criticism at the moment is, you know, speed is obviously one thing, but to a certain extent, you know, it is
absent
what it is.
Communication as well is a really bad problem.
I've talked to them about this, and the thing is that, like, there is a very... Basically, it's like, you know how every army is always fighting the last war? That's kind of how it is with Patchlock and Pyro. It's like they are really bruised by the experience of the launch. And you might say justifiably, and it's like, yeah, but you don't care why you get punched, just that you get punched, right? And the other thing is that they've had really they felt.
Some of the bad response for launch was like due specifically to bad lack of and bad communication. They literally lied. They literally lied to us about the class stuff. You know.
I agree, but what I mean is, it's like the way that that certainly the higher ups look at it. To be fair, I'm not talking to people who make those decisions, so you know. But like, my impression is basically that just like, in general, the feeling is that when we talk about stuff, the response has tended to be more negative.
That's wrong. That's a wrong perception. That's crazy.
Well,
it's the opposite.
I mean, for whatever reason, that's what they think, and so it's like, I can't tell them that's not the case. You see what I mean? Like, because they'll just be like, well, that's what we found. And so what they, I think, have decided to take the approach of is basically just not saying very much and then giving people surprise presents. Now, that is better than the alternative, which is saying nothing and doing nothing. I also think that the test server, one of the things, one of the reasons the test server is so active, I think, is basically they kind of shut off the communication because so much of it was so negative, and also so much of it was so stupid. I think it's one of the other problems too, is that the average level of clue in the community in this game is very low.
Yeah.
And I mean that sounds harsh, but I mean, you know.
I think it's true of like every game.
Yeah,
honestly,
and
like every online community like that.
Yeah, and you know, to take a concrete example of this, if you were to just measure sentiment about weapons on the Reddit, you would get the bolt hard buff.
Yeah.
Right. And
people think Smite is good and a sale is like, oh shit now.
Yeah.
That's like the public perception.
Oh god, yeah. I mean, I would say that you can make an argument that the bolter is not as good as it should be relative to how good some of the other guns are that don't have its disadvantages, which is something you could say, but to me that's more a statement about how some guns are more powerful than they should be.
Yes.
But
oh, come on.
It's also just that most people don't really have a strong expectation for where stuff should be. Because it's like, the bolter should have weaknesses. And that's true both from like even if you say but the lore, and I mean I actually think people meme on the lore stuff, but it's really good to have a source of guidance for what you're trying to accomplish that isn't just players like or dislike this. Like the reason that Darktide and games like this have a specific flavor is that the people who make it have aesthetic preferences that go beyond merely things are good or bad. It's not so much about whether or not something in the abstract should match up to lore. It's just like this game represents a universe, and the universe itself, there is some value to representing that universe in a way that is cool and shines people's experience of it. Yeah. And it's just like, people often say make the bolter instant pull out. And it's like, okay, you could probably represent the clunkiness of the bolter in a better way than its current like galaxy-sized pull out. Do some other things with it, but I would rather have the just something that means when you're playing it, you're like, oh, I get it. This is why these things aren't used by humans. You know what I mean?
It contributes to its identity, like both in a balanced and a thematic kind of way.
Yeah,
even though it is like a bit annoying and the animation for it is awful.
Exactly, and if it makes the gun completely unusable, then obviously that's the point where you say nah, right? But that's not the case with the gun at the moment. And I think there's also very much a demand where a lot of people want guns in a similar class to lose the things that make them different from each other, because the things that make them different are downsides. And an example of that was the bolter flak ADM. The bolter was one of the few guns in the game that didn't fuck flak more than everything else. And partly that was a lore thing, apparently, which is that the bolter is surprisingly less good against flak armor than it should be for some reason in the lore. I can't remember why. But the second thing about it is like, it didn't make the gun useless, but it was just a nice feeling difference. You pick up a bolter and you're like, oh, this thing's going to shit on this, and maybe less than you would expect this. And now the bolter just, it's tending to that.
What are these spawns?
This is so bad.
Yeah, there was nothing.
This is I think this is the lowest amount of spawns I've seen in a studio. And Crab, the person responsible, personally appointed by John Fetcher to balance the game, thinks less stuff should spawn. Insult him, everybody.
Oh yeah, like if I
Horrible
could,
run.
I would make it so you get one Poxwalker, but if you go within 100 feet of him, you get the Turbo Plague and die. That's
but you don't die in the mission. Your character gets deleted 5 missions later and has a cutscene.
You get the Ultra Plague, and you have to go to Hadron. She has to amputate your leg.
And then you can't sprint anymore.
Exactly. But I think there is a sense where certainly stuff like the Hellball Lasguns, I find the draw on Hellball Lasguns annoying. But certainly for the Hellball 3, it should feel like an elephant gun. Like, it has to sit in that space. And if you just go, okay, well, we're removing the downsides of this gun so that in every usability sense, it's competitive with the ordinary lasguns, which are these ordinary, mainline, modern infantry weapons designed to be light and portable, usable by a fucking idiot. It's like, it doesn't... Then you end up in the situation where you're having to differentiate them purely in, like, damage.
In the calculator realm. No, I completely agree. I just think that we could do one thing to help board guns, and everybody would stop complaining about the draw time. Make the animation not retarded, because currently he takes it out. Yeah. He looks at the weapon, flicks the switch while having the gun pointing to his left, and then he like shoulders it. What I want the Hellbore animation to be is, he pulls it out, and he's like holding it kind of forward, not like completely pointing forward, but like, not like fucking facing to the left. And he's using his right hand and he is cranking the button like it is a hard lever to pull.
Yes. No, I think it was. I'll suggest this right now because the thing about it.
And it makes a loud like sound.
No, exactly. But it also makes you look incompetent because you're so lackadaisical about pulling it out. It's just like, I've got all the time in the world. I'll just flick the switch.
Oh, look at this little button. I wonder what it does. Oh, look at this dongle.
But
it's horrible.
I think, yeah. But just to go back to kind of the problem with feedback is like, I think I'm glad that they do have the private test server. I think the problem with the private test server is that a lot of the stuff that currently needs to be messed with is stuff that really needs to be tested in groups that play a very large number of games. Do you know what I mean? Like, what you really need is you need a group of people or a group of testers who are going to play 1,000 games with adjusted spawns. Because that's the sample size you need in order to know, like, a given spawn setup is good. 1 or 2 isn't good enough. Because the problem isn't... The problem isn't the fact that 80% of the games are fine. The problem is the 20% of games that are not fine. It's not good enough to say you have a 1 in 5 chance of having a bad time.
I
Do you know
don't.
what I mean?
I think it's much higher than that. Like the
Oh no,
game just
it might be,
straight
but I
up,
just mean,
like,
you know, as
yeah.
example numbers, right?
Like
Um,
the low, like the amount of times like we just have nothing spawn or like no monsters in events. Like we play a monstrous map and like the peak monster damage is like 130k. Like nothing happens. It's insane, dude. It happens so
Yeah.
often. And I think a big problem too is that currently speedrunning is still the optimal way to play Darktide. Like the optimal way to play this game is to disconnect yourself from the game as possible and just speed through it, and the game can't do anything to stop you.
Yeah, this is so this
we
is
need
like
things.
so one of the very high level things that I want to change about the enemies is basically at the moment the enemies still behave a little bit like MMO enemies. You know where they like stand around in a pack and they wait to get aggroed?
Yeah, they removed the big pack of poxwalkers though. That's gonna something.
Oh yeah. Well, but I think it's just like this is a real thing where it is like a lot of the things that you suggest would be they sound really not fun. But one of the things about the human
That
enemies,
I
like scab
suggest.
shooters. Well, no. Sorry, I'm saying one. Like when you think about what you would want to do to address this, it's like take scab shooters, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that this game's got a bit disconnected from is what the experience you're trying to give the players is. And part of that is that like if you're facing human enemies, the experience of facing human enemies is that they actually act like agents that are doing something. And for the scab enemies, that means they should be waiting for you when you come into the room.
It's a complete failure at the moment, and I
Yeah,
think
they
what you're
should be in
saying, what
cover.
you're saying, okay, I've been having this talk a lot about like stalkers and how they need to change, but I think in general, one thing I dislike is that this game, okay, this is gonna be a long rant because it's like there's like interplay between like pure gameplay in a mechanical sense and just like how the enemies feel. I really like, and everybody really likes, when the enemy that has the cool voice, that has a cool personality, which all of the human enemies do. The scabs are great. The dregs are fantastic. They're quotable. They have a good sound filter. When there's a woman soldier, it sounds horrible. What can you do? It's just the way it is. 2023. You know, equal rights, equal left.
No, but to be fair,
And,
it's accurate to the law actually.
It is. Give me a filter to turn that shit off. Anyway, currently they feel like complete fucking retards, and like that's a really great point you bring up. That like the scabs should be set up, and you know what they should do when they're set up in advance. We even have voice lines for when they have set up and they're in cover. Like they're dug in. Good. Make that a mechanic.
Yes. So this is something that if any of you have played Fear.
Yes,
how the AI
dude, I was just going there.
Yeah.
People love hearing the HECU in Half-Life and the replica in Fear, because it's like both a fantastic thematic thing that you remember and becomes iconic, but it also serves a fantastic gameplay purpose that like adds tension and informs you on the current state of where the enemies are without showing it to you visually. And what I want them to be heard on the radio, setting up ambush, defensive pattern, Gamma, Torox, Kappa 2, and then you go into the room and they are like lined up in what looks like a reasonable defensive line formation.
Yeah, exactly.
Then-
And a lot of it is too like they have all this stuff where they're performing actions that are cool. Like so, you know how they do the thing where they peek around cover and you can shoot them in the head while they're doing it.
Yeah.
The problem is they do these actions. It's heavy. But they perform that peak at like 0.25 speed, right? Like they do all these things so cartoonishly slowly that it makes it means that because the speed of the game is just higher, you never deal with their behavior because they're effectively just static.
Yeah.
And
You never take the
yeah.
chance to like blow up. Is like, oh, this guy's is peeking his head. Quick, I need to flake. It's just like I have 3 hours to aim at his head, and assuming the game hasn't unplugged my mouse through suppression, he's gonna be dead. Like it's just yeah.
And also in most PvE games, the enemies have a way to get you out of cover. Grenades.
Yes.
In this game, they don't. The grenadier is not part of the groups. Like the basic enemies don't have like any way to stop you from just camping in cover.
We need a frag nade and okay, stalkers, dude. Stalkers. I have the best ideas for stalkers. My stalker redesign is fucking crazy, dude. You're gonna shit your pants. You're gonna shit
Hit me.
your pants. Okay. First of all, we talked about like the Bulwark, and I showed the concept art. One thing I didn't get to touch on is that the game has this really cool system in theory where you have like 17 different armor types. How many enemies do you know have variable armor on them? Like they can spawn with different armor configuration.
I don't even think there's one.
There is not a single one. And what I want is for the stalkers, this nerd right here, this cocksucker, first of all, going into melee shouldn't be an instant you win button against ranged enemies. Like, people are always frustrated, like, oh, why is he still shooting me? Well, the alternative is he just disappears. Also, he's like crispy. I need to respawn him because he looks stupid. But like, walking up to this guy, or worse, walking up to a shotgun should not be this guy is no longer a threat in gameplay ever. And so what I want for Stalkers, these little nerds, what is the problem with Stalkers? Well, it's a ranged enemy that walks into your melee range in a nice line. They're all lined up, so they just get mulched. In a sense, they're kind of cool because it's the only enemy you can manipulate. But that manipulation is never interesting and is always the same. Is we go behind the corner, and this guy, he comes to us, and we kill him with our sword, or our void strike, or whatever the fuck you have on hand, because they're pathetic, they suck. And what I want is these dudes, just like dregs, they can come in different types. You have one guy that has a shotgun and like a little shield, like that they like it's an actual based on a model, and he is the guy that you that will fucking push in, and he's like a bit annoying to shoot. Like, you have to hit the legs, you have to hit the head, like over the shield or the arm, and he can like crouch down behind his shield, and he becomes like a pain in your ass because he's not a shotgunner you can just walk up to and fucking BTFO. I want
like a Navy breacher.
Come again?
Like a Navy breacher.
Exactly. That's exactly what I had in mind. And so you have the shotgun breacher guy. You have the guy with the carbine that we have now. You have a sort of lesser elite who's like the leader, like the scab leader, and he gives orders that you hear in the radio. And also their name, they are Stalkers. They should be stalking you. They should be like, you should hear on the radio, deploy Stalker unit, Gamma 732, and then there's like a sound, like a sound or something, and they like swarm in. And it's like a thing that they do. Also have one of them be able to throw grenades, like a distinct stalker type that chucks grenades.
This actually, two things you've mentioned there are something that I want for all the scab units, which is instead of spawning like 8 shooters, you spawn 4 shooters and 1 squad leader, like a sergeant. And the sergeant is the one who has the grenades. And while the sergeant is active, and the sergeant is also, by the way, has like, you know, he has a better weapon loadout. Like he could have a power sword or something. The point is just that if you close with the unit, there's a melee.
He protects his children.
Yes. Yeah. Well, but it's also, it's just like you have to pay attention to him. But the other thing about him is that he would make the soldiers in his squad shoot faster and be more accurate while he's present. And if you kill him,
one of the most interesting enemies in Vermintide 2 was the Banner Boy, because the Banner Boy, by merely existing, forced decision-making in ways that were interesting. Do I manage to kill him before he plants the banner? Does he plant the banner and we're forced to retreat, which is annoying? Do we have a diving tool? Do we spend resources to use a bomb? He was fascinating, he was cool, he was fun, and also you could jump with the flag explosion, that was cool. We need something like this. Also, shotgunners. Shotgunners need to be a hybrid melee range unit, like the Stalkers. They should be a threat in melee. They shouldn't be some nerd that pulls out a shovel and you murder 10 of them in 2 seconds with Devil Claw.
No, shotgunners are a mess.
Yeah.
I think they need to redesign shotgunners entirely, and because what shotgunners are meant to do is close you down. But I think the other thing is that with this thing about squad leaders is first, it reduces the number of raw shooters on the field, and this is the other thing, is that like Darktide has quite fun ranged gameplay, because you can actually choose when you turn them into range fire, but you can't engage with 8. Like if you're in the open and there's 8 shooters, it's too many scope flashes.
You spam slide. You spam slide. There's just no other way. There's no other way to deal with it.
Exactly, and I think that taking a big chunk of that range threat and putting it onto a single enemy who would have like a plasma pistol, right? So he would have a single high damage shot, which you can engage with, right? You can pay attention to that individual queue.
You have to pay attention to it.
Exactly. And so it leans into everything that is good about the combat model, which is you being able to interpret. Because this is the reason I think they need to reduce the number of spawns, and it's because at the moment, the way the game has been made more difficult, and this is completely understandable, is they've removed a whole bunch of stuff that was bullshit, and that's good. Like it had to happen, but it's made the game a lot easier. Like removing instant fire strip does make the game easier, and people often say, well, you know, I'm complaining about, well, I say that the players have got more powerful, and that overall has made the game balance less good, while also demanding things that make the game easier. And it's like, yes, because it's not hard, good, easy, bad.
Have you actually had someone say that to you?
People say a lot of stuff about things like this. Like, you know, the input buffer in Dark Souls. The input buffer in Dark Souls is too long, and it's just bad design. Like, it's been long for a long time just because it can be. And, like, it literally is just, if you press the button, like, it'll keep for a second and commit you to a move you didn't want to do. And there's no reason for this. It doesn't accomplish anything except maybe to give you the feeling you're controlling a drunk person. People are just like, oh, it's part of the skill. And it's just like if people have learned how to deal with bullshit, they end up in this like Stockholm syndrome where they're like, oh no,
The
if you take
bullshit
it away,
has
it's
to
unfair.
stay because I mastered it.
Exactly, because
I gotta say, I have the best community because I was fully expecting something like that. Like Keg always posts these like bait posts that are excellent with like a nerd emoji, and he always says shit like that. It's like, you complain the game's too easy, but you want the bullshit removed. People have been pretty good like in comments about that. Like when I complain the game's too easy, like I had someone like I said the relic is like it's like a bad active ability. It's dog shit. It never in a million years could compete with like either dash or invis or vetch out. And someone asked me like a very nice, very well worded question. I had a very nice answer about like how I would change it. And it's like you can want things like certain things to be less bullshit and also want certain things to be less powerful, like for
that's
on both sides.
I feel like the relic's actually too powerful
for
the amount of effort that you have to put into it.
Kind of.
My beef with the relic is, and so this is again like at the moment the relic is not better than the other options if you're a good player. Because if you're a good player, you know what you can get away with the invisibility and the dash, and there's so many different things that you could like. They provide so much optionality. But the thing about the relic is, how much IQ do you need to activate the relic?
0.
And the thing about the relic is, what does the relic do? It turns off every single ranged enemy in your line of sight. They all get suppressed. They get blinded, actually. It's a new form of suppression.
They have a unique animation that's really cool. I played Relic for the first time in a couple of videos. It's really good. Like, they hide their hand. Here's what I would do to the Relic. I'm going to show the talent tree. I have... Crab, you're going to piss your pants. You know your idea of putting the grenades as a war gear option?
Yeah.
I want that on every character except Psyker. Everyone has that, because that way we can add more grenades later. And it's cool, but also, check this shit out. So, okay, what's wrong with the Relic right now? There's a lot that's wrong with the Relic. Like a fantastic amount. It has this node that you have to take. Like the node below it, like Banishing Light. Make it baseline. This is the only active ability in the game with a mandatory point tax.
Execution stance.
Does it?
You have to take reset.
The refresh.
Or what are you doing with your life?
Yeah, the refresh. That's true.
But I mean,
but you have technically you have the option not to take it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, but I mean, to me, that's not the problem with the ability. I mean, I agree.
There's more.
Like,
there's more. There's more.
Yeah,
Hold on.
sorry.
Settle down. Settle down, my friend. I hate that these channel actions like Smite and Relic. The last thing you want to do is incentivize someone to hold it in his fucking hand as long as humanly possible. 5 pulses is way too fucking long, and the 2 things on the side, like the thing that gives you toughness DR and bonus damage, instead of being an all or nothing, like channel 5 pulses get the bonus, I would do, you channel, now it's like 3 pulses max, every pulse staggering a monster. It's way quicker, it's way less annoying, takes people out of the game for less long, and what you do is like 1 pulse, 33% of the total bonus. That way, you can just do, you have some decisions, because right now it's always optimal, just fucking stick it out for as long as possible. Like a retard.
Yeah, it's and it would also be the case that if, say, you had it on a meter instead of a cooldown, you could incentivize using it, say, every 10 or 15 seconds for a quick stagger or a quick blind or a quick engagement tool.
Make it a meter. So true. We need more stuff like that just engineer.
And I wonder if you could suggest it so that if you're using a one-handed weapon, you could use it without dropping that weapon.
I want that on everything, like guns, throwing knives. Yeah. But not two-handed melee weapons. I agree.
Oh, yeah, exactly. But this was just like, when I saw it, I was like, they had to add. So this got buffed a lot because when it first came out, it was so much worse. Like, and I think where it is now is like, the reason that I think it's too powerful is just that I think that baseline players have too much control over enemy state.
Card control is too strong. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that in particular, it's like if you were making the game harder again, it's like the CC of the Relic is infinite Cleave CC, right? It's everything. And I like that you can stagger monsters with it. That's fun.
I do, mind you, when I suggest changes to the Relic, it's like, if we are gonna keep it the way it is, it needs to be improved in like XYZ fashion. Because in my ideal mind, we wouldn't have like a mass CC ability on anyone. Smite should not be here. Chorus should not be here, because we're gonna end up, it's gonna be extremely black and white. You either have a tool that turns off the game, or something that's useless.
Yeah,
and it is going to be impossible to find like a middle ground in when it comes to that. And so my idea for the relic was that initially I thought like you just drop something and it looks cool. It's like a cool statue or a banner or something, and it like provides stuff like on the ground. That way you can move, you can do stuff, and it would even do shit like it gives the rewards when players that are inside it are killing things to incentivize like active play. But then I had an even bigger brain idea. I like your idea of making it a meter, because currently cooldown is broken and cooldown reduction is like really bad and unhealthy for the game, and the way Zella gets it is stupid.
Yeah, the Invocation of Death. I've literally made the same post about this 10 times. Once per swing, 1 second per light attack, and 3 seconds per heavy, and that's it. If you're going to keep it, in brackets, they shouldn't. But if they're going to, it should not be per target. It's just like...
Also, why is it a flat second? It's like Relic gets screwed over for no reason, but Dash and Shroudfield gets to be spammed like extremely fucking hard.
Well, I mean, to be fair,
it's like the rich get richer.
Well, it's like if you want to have a long cooldown, I wouldn't want it to be.
That's what you read, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, like, but the thing about it is that I just think that this idea that you have, basically, long cooldown, high impact abilities always sound nice in theory, but they always end up being broken or useless. You see what I mean in a game like this? Because I mean, you have it.
It's like it's either the thing that you completely depend on, or it's like it's not even a high cooldown, but you know, like the vets with the shout that revives and they just never fucking use it like all game.
Yeah,
it leads to that kind of gameplay.
And it's also, it's like if you have this capacity that you only have 10% of the time, like for 10 seconds every 60 or whatever it is, 10 seconds, and it's good enough for you to use, it means that it needs to be so good that you are, relatively speaking, so weak for the rest of the time in order for it to be balanced versus other options.
Yeah.
And like, you know, there's a couple of other things I want to do. For example, talking about armor, the Chastise should no longer have the ranged armor drop. It should be when you shoot, your next shot acts like a melee attack. It gets the bonus, but it removes the buff. So you don't just get to have free armor penetration as a zealot. It can just be a 20% attack speed, gap closer, 50% toughness, ranged immunity.
It's ridiculous that's still in the
guaranteed
game.
Crit, 25% damage move. It can just be that, you know? That's it. Yeah. It doesn't need. Because it
doesn't even say like on the description that it does it to range.
Oh yeah,
it's so weird.
Exactly. That's why I would do that, but yeah. No, I agree.
How open are they, by the way, to like reworking like all keystones like in general?
I think the short answer is that they are surprisingly open in the abstract to a lot of things. Like there's not a hard anti doing lots of things, but what they are very reluctant to do is things that look like nerfs. And so what that means is, in general, changes. If you want to change stuff, it usually has to be part of a complex enough or interesting enough rework that it doesn't get interpreted as a straight nerf.
Let me in.
Yeah, I will re-upload my request.
I pace around my apartment like at night thinking of reworks because I hate blazing piety and I hate inexorable judgment. I strongly dislike martyrdom, but at least martyrdom you have to do a thing to get the bonus. Piety and momentum are just fucking permanent passive buffs, and I fucking hate them.
Also, martyrdom is melee only.
Yeah,
I think there's a.
I mean, it's also a toughness DR. For free.
Yeah. But to be fair though, I think with martyrdom, it's like if you're missing wounds, it makes sense and it gives you some defensive upside. But what I would want to
we shouldn't incentivize stacking wounds in the first place because it's fucking degenerate and doesn't lead to any interesting gameplay.
Like when I saw the design of that, I was just like, no one wants to use wounds. The fix for that isn't making it so that there's one build that has to use wounds.
Yeah.
so my issue with Blazing Party is much more straightforward. Crits has been handed out for free because crits used to do nothing. And now crit does a lot more on a lot of guns, which in an abstract sense is good because the mechanic is more meaningful, but it also means here's 25% free at global agnostic crit is not a good thing to have. And it only gets worse over time. The more stuff they add to crit, the more deranged that gets. It's doubly deranged if you also have stuff like CDR and crit, but...
Oh yeah.
I mean, I 100% agree. Also, Blazing Party is boring.
Yeah, no, it's just like passive crit chance. It's
just get more credit.
So here's what I had. You know, like gun zealot. I had an idea for something which is like anointed shots. Like it's something where you get stacks of it when you get melee kills, and it's something like the next percentage of shots in your mag is like blessed with holy light. Something like it's got to be like a small amount of bullets. Like I don't want a fucking zealot to start spew in a debuff with a brave style gun. It's like a quarter of your ammo like rounding up. It's like 2 shots on a revolver, and it should be something like it makes the enemy like fucking glow and burn, and they've got like that fire in their eyes. It's like holy light coming out of it.
Yeah, like the white fire from the nades.
Yeah, and when you fucking kill the guy that got the anointed shot, like they explode like in a blaze of holy light, and they set stuff on fire. Something like that. Something that's like you incentivize hybrid gameplay. I go in melee, and then my bullets they do cool stuff.
Oh yeah, no, I think that's what I would for Blazing Piety. That to me, it always felt like the ranged aspect of Zealot would be something that's hybrid fire ranged, so that you could support Flamer as well. And so the idea is, it would be something like that. I also think
weapon specialist, but holy. Basically.
Well, but I mean, weapon specialist needs a bit too. Someone mentioned swap speed for weapon specialist. I wanted that. Yeah. I think there were implementation issues, just basically because how there's like each weapon has its own like process for how you pull it out and things like that. I think that was a little bit of fiddling. I very much do think that swap speed is something that would be cool to encourage, because it's
so weird that it has 20 modifiers, but it doesn't have that when the whole Keystone's about swapping.
Well, I think it's also just like, the Keystones for Vet had to be made quite quickly, and I think you would have to do a little bit of back end work to get the stat for swap speed in.
To be fair, if they changed the stack gain and loss condition on focus on marksman's focus, a veteran would have 2 out of 3 Keystones that are really good and promote a specific playstyle, at least on a conceptual level, and that's like incredible, because you look at Zealot. Zealot doesn't have a single fun Keystone. Not a single one of them is fun or interesting.
I mean, to be fair, I do quite like quickness. Well, what's it called now? Momentum.
Inexorable judgment. It gives you stacks.
Inexorable judgment, just because it is quite funny going fast, but it's not healthy. It's
retarded, bro. It's just like, your dodges are better. It's 20% attack speed for both melee and ranged, and 20% damage permanently for everything you do for the low cost of just playing the game normally. It's retarded. Get that shit out of here. And my other idea, I haven't developed any gameplay like ideas, like I haven't sat down for it, but I think there should be. So one of the Keystones, get rid of Piety, put my cool Sainted Gunslinger idea. And Zealot even has skills that are called like Sainted Gunslinger and shit, but they're all so lame, they suck, and they're in the bad tree.
Oh, but I mean, so a fun thing you could do with the Blazing Piety replacement is weak spot kills on burning enemies cause them to explode, dealing X damage, and this would work with both melee and range. Yeah, Disrupt Destiny is like, I don't like Disrupt Destiny at all, and I think that it's really good. What I dislike about Disrupt Destiny, and I imagine this is probably what's happened. I haven't been checking what people feel like, but I imagine more people are beginning to realize that it's kind of stupid. Like, it gives you the stats that it gives you is way too much, and it really is ridiculous amounts of damage for not really doing anything different. If you know what I mean? And I think for me,
here's what I like about it. Is that it actually encourages like a certain playstyle, which is like the snowbally, like go in and keep the chain going. Like what was it? Kerry called it. It was like the adrenaline treadmill, like the dopamine treadmill.
So I love mechanics that are like riding a wave, but this is not quite that, because it's like, everyone tends to take the 30-second duration, and
yeah, but the problem is you get too many stacks and they don't last long enough, and you don't have a way to spend the stacks. I like when things give me something to play with. Like, that's why I think Empowered Psionics,
like a resource.
Empowered Psionics is so cool, because you have something you can play around, and I'd love if Disrupt Destiny had something like that.
Yeah, all I will say about Disrupt Destiny is that people don't know why the stats it gives you are so fucked up, because the easiest example is the Columnus, right? If you just take max stacks, Disrupt Destiny, pop Scryer's Gaze, and Columnus, the numbers that come out of that are dumb. And like, there is no way to. And it's not.
I've been playing Disrupt Destiny last week like all day, dude. Like fucking walking up to a monster with Scryer's Gaze, like bye.
Yeah, and to me, it's like a lot of these precision things, and it's like with Marksman's Focus. What I really wanted for Marksman's Focus was consecutive weak spot hits, like much more of an emphasis on not missing.
Yeah, like missing straight up, like removes your stacks instead of an emphasis on not moving. Like, Why?
Yeah, well, that was what I wanted. Is I wanted like one that was easy come, easy go, which is you get stacks on weak spot hit, but you lose half your stacks on missing. So the idea is that you, and obviously with a small internal cooldown, so automatic weapons don't just like instantly full stack it. But the idea would just be,
which is what it currently reinforces. Like currently, the optimal way to stack a fucking marksman's focus is to unload a full auto weapon into garbage.
Dude, and also what I really wanted for the one that's 10% rending, like above 10. I wanted that to be above 10 stacks. Weak spot hits have range brutal momentum.
That or a ricochet, like the bullet just bounces like a magic bullet.
Yeah, well, I thought about that, but I would want it to be range brutal momentum because lining stuff up is cool. You know what I mean? Like, when you get multiple kills with a revolver.
It's something that now impacts your gameplay in like a reactive way. Like you're making decisions and changing the way you do things because of you want a certain bonus. Yeah, very, very cool.
I really like chain lightning mechanics, but the way the game currently works, everything
it would either break or be useless.
Chain lightning are terrible. Yeah, it's terrible. And like, it's and if you think through all of because the other thing that there's tons of stuff that needs to be messed with, but one of them is just like there's still 2 out of 4 Psyker staves that are awful. Trauma is mid, and Void Strike is probably still too powerful. I haven't checked.
I think Trauma is game breaking. I think Trauma needs
Trauma. Okay, but would you say Trauma was game breaking if there were fewer enemies but they were tougher?
Yes, because it could just stun them permanently.
So, but yeah, I mean, to be fair though, that's partly because there's a lot of like stagger.
Hey, dude, do you know what I want? Do you know what Psyker's biggest problem is for staff balance and why we can't balance staffs at all? Psyker, peril doesn't exist for staff. Psyker, peril is not a thing. Peril is free damage, and it's a binary. It's like I'm either at 100% or I'm not, and if I'm not, I cast. If I am, I vent or press F and set the world on fire, and everything is dead.
No, I agree. 100%.
Here's what I want to do. Peril, when you're above like 70%. If you want to quell, it does damage. Like, you actually take health damage. But you give people active ways of getting rid of peril. And there's a lot of ways to go about it. So first of all, the damage you take isn't when you start quelling, but when you stop quelling. And you make quelling slower, like it was at launch, where it, like, snowballs. Like, the longer you quell... Yeah, that was super cool. Bring that back, and you make the reason for it now is like, okay, I have to actually make use of this quell. If I make the decision that I'm going to lose health to quell something, I have to commit to my quell. And I'm rewarded for it by taking, by quelling more per the damage I take, which I think is interesting. But now what you do is you do things like, did you ever play Vermintide 1 at all?
I didn't play it, but I've watched enough of it that I have a rough idea of what happened in it.
Vermintide 1 had a fantastic blessing for Sienna that was called Earthing Rune, which was for your melee weapon. And it was when you hit stuff in melee, you have a chance to vent, to quell peril. The problem was, in Vermintide 1, staffs could heal you. And so you would just fucking vent and spam staff and heal back. And so no one ever used it. But it's a cool mechanic. Psyker should be incentivized to fucking blammo with the big staff and then rush into melee with his cool psychic sword and do stuff with it. Dude, it was perm health regain, not just from melee, but also from ranged. Like, your staff would heal you. That's fucking stupid. Like, yeah, exactly. Overcharging was not an issue. And in V2, you generated so much temp health that venting was just like, who cares? Like, I'm just going to hit, like, a horde once, and my health is back to full. And so my ideas were, first of all, you can melee quell, because that's cool and fun. Second of all, empowered psionics. This node right here, that's like replenishing toughness to you and allies, cool. Psyker doesn't need any more toughness. Get that out of there, and make something like consuming a stack of empowered psionics quells peril. Like, Necromancer in V2, how she can eat a skeleton to vent overcharge? That's cool. You have an active action you can take, like an action, by definition, to vent your peril. That's based on a resource that you can manage. You're now having fun. You're now playing a video game, and then of course
this is at a high level. My issue with almost everything in the Psyker tree at the moment is that almost everything is passive. You get perilous combustion free. Your automatic quell is a 10% chance on kill. Every single thing that you're getting is just random. It's free. It's stuff you should already be doing. And I completely agree. I think a whole bunch of this stuff needs to be turned into concrete actions. And a big issue with a lot of the staves, like one of the other things is Perg staff needs to not be warp fire. It needs to be its own separate category. And warp fire needs to be something that is purely dealt with by the tree and like the secondary
Exactly.
resources.
And then what do you do? What do you do with that? Warp charges? What do we think of warp charges, Crab? Say the correct thing.
They're unusable. At least in my opinion, they're unusable because, well, it's not unusable, but like the fact you're forced to dump them as part of the built-in node structure is insane to me.
Yes, but say you hate them right now.
Oh yeah, I'd never use them. I hate them.
Okay,
like, it's like so it's awful. It's like
I hate warp charges. It's like a 1,000,000 point dump. It's purely passive damage increase. It doesn't do anything interesting. It's get a reward for playing the game normally, like venting them all on F or not, like notwithstanding.
Oh yeah, and it doesn't work with fucking scryers.
Yeah, you can like with scryers you can play a really funny game with yourself, which is can I regain my warp charges before the peril goes up? I like that. That's kind of funny. That's a funny minigame you can play with yourself. It's a bit of anti-synergistic fun.
And the CDR doesn't work. Because the scryers can't cool down while it's active.
Yes,
I think you can. I think if you're at 100% and you activate scryers, doesn't it work then because it instantly goes on cooldown? I can't remember if that happens, but yeah.
If you're on 100% and you use scryers, you die.
Do you die? I thought it just instantly turned off. I can't remember.
Oh no! Yeah, no, it would turn off. I'm
yeah, and I think if you do that, the warp charge CDR applies because it's instantly deactivated, and so it's on cooldown now, and it can have CDR applied to it, but it can't have CDR while it's active.
So,
but yeah,
I talked to JSAT, and JSAT agreed, so it means I'm smart and correct. I think dots are uninteresting fundamentally for any type of game. And what I'd like to do is like Psyker's. One of Psyker's biggest problems is that he just doesn't fucking melee, and when he does melee, it is to do retarded shit with Rending and everything. He starts the Great Fire Abattoir Azma'aman, and everything fucking dies because everything is rendered and taking a million fucking stacks.
Let's start the fire. Abattoir Azma'aman.
It's not playing.
Let's start the fire.
There you go.
Abattoir Azma'aman.
And what I would want to do is like instead of having warp charges, you have a Soul Blaze focused Keystone, and it gives you an interactive, active way to do stuff with fire. And I had this idea of you do something mechanically with your melee to extinguish enemies, like reaping the fire, dealing damage, and then it grants you some sort of bust, some sort of active ability you need to trigger.
I recall some wise crustacean, maybe 4 months ago, suggesting that the active attack on the Force Sword, the base Obscurus Force Sword, if you use the empowered attack on it, on an enemy with warp fire stacks, it consumes the stacks, they explode, and it spreads that number of stacks to every target around you in an X meter radius. Basically, like, you need to... Yeah, I 100% agree, and I think that the Perg makes it so that Soul Blaze can't be balanced, because Perg puts enough Soul Blaze...
Because it just shits it out. Like, that's the only thing it does. Yeah.
And so it's like, if someone says, oh, you can get 4 stacks on a crit on your melee, it's like, who gives a shit? No, I can apply an infinite number of stacks. This cannot be balanced.
Every other week, I have someone who says they want to make the funny Force Sword, and I have to tell them, don't do it. It's a nightmare grind, and the result is extremely underwhelming. Don't do it.
There's also at the moment, the Psyker is a major culprit in the uncanny nonsense. And basically, uncanny is like
impossible to balance.
Well, but it's not just that. It's also just that they put uncanny on every shit weapon. Like that was when the game came out. They literally just went every weapon that isn't very good, put uncanny on it. So the shovel, all the dueling swords, a bunch of other ones on release, like they just put uncanny on everything.
And now
they need to remove uncanny from all of those weapons. All of them, including your shovel.
I mean, the way Rending, like we said that before, Rending just shouldn't be in the game. Like giving yourself a buff to everything that you're currently doing. You're fucking kidding me? No way you can balance that. Okay, I swing my blade at a guy and he bleeds, and then I stab another guy in the head and it causes the first guy to die of bleed. What? Get that out of there. It's so dumb, dude.
There's one exception to this, which is if you're using a knife with uncanny and you're a zealot with throwing knives, those throwing knives should get the uncanny because that's fucking sick. And I love the fact that they stack uncanny too.
I think some abilities, like interactions, where it's like you could say that it doesn't give it to your person, but it gives it to a tool. Like I think assail interactions are cool. I think throwing knife interactions are cool.
This is you're absolutely correct, and this is something that I've been hammering them about. What I want them is to very clearly state what the exact parameters of every buff are, what it applies to, under what conditions, and they need to make categories like weapon buff, personal buff, enemy debuff. And when you look at the thing, it's like this is a weapon buff. It applies only to things done with this weapon.
And we need a compendium. We need proper tooltips. We need the game just doesn't say anything to anyone about.
Dude, I've offered to write this. I've said to them, I will straight up write you a fucking glossary. But the thing about this too is that like for rending, like the only place I think there should be percentage rending is weapon specific triggers. So stuff like hand cannon. I mean, hand cannon is a problem because it's on a gun that's ridiculous. The numbers are too high. But conceptually, hand cannon is an example of where rending makes sense. Because it's just like, it's only applying to the bullet fired from this gun. It is a property of the weapon.
Or if you gave it to, like, let's say, a rework of the Heavy Sword 7, where it becomes a can opener, and let's say that hypothetical, never talked about before, redesign of the Heavy Sword 6, actually. It's a 6 I want to change. I love the Pooper Scooper. Make the 6 to have, like, some kind of staged heavy that deals percentage rending, so you're incentivized to charge it to really can open. I don't know. Crazy ideas. Insane ideas. I wonder who...
I mean, this is also, like... There's another 2 background systems that slightly link to this, and one of them is basically, I want every attack that is a sweep. Basically, there are 3 different tiers of finesse in this game, from my point of view, which is any attack that's a sweep should always have the worst finesse. Diagonal attacks should have
thank you for the plus
the highest finesse, and overheads should have the middle. And so the reason for this is just like all the problematic attacks in this game have traditionally been either like one-shot attacks or they've been horizontal sweeps. And you know, this is even true now. Like if you think back to the most broken Heavy Sword 9, old Heavy Sword 9 sweeps with brutal momentum, or CAC's brutal momentum, it's the flat sweeps that are the problematic ones. And then uppercuts should have the highest finesse of all.
Yeah.
Always. Because like uppercuts are otherwise they're moveset spoilers. They're hard to hit and no reward.
I think brutal momentum is this kind of thing that's going to be really hard to balance, because there are the edge cases, like, well, combat axes exist and Heavy Sword 9 exists, and it's like, okay, well, 6 and 7 just, they can go fuck themselves, I guess. I think if you want that quad decapitation on an elite on a Heavy Sword 9, you should have to like really work for it. It should be something you get.
Yes, my view on brutal momentum now is basically this. I think that there should be a category of attack which is called headsman, which has 1 charge of brutal momentum inherently.
Thank you, brother.
And that would be an attack level property, and that would basically get you that, because there is this thing with like an axe where it's like if you're swinging it hard enough, it's like, you know, that berserk.
You go through the neck, but then it gets stuck into the second guy. Totally, yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, that's kind of why I like brutal momentum. Like the fantasy it fulfills is like really cool, and I think brutal momentum, it is hands down, brutal momentum is the most interesting blessing in the game. But there are cases where it becomes ridiculous. Like the new Ogren Shovel, like you fucking raise that thing up, you kill 4 crushers in one thing.
Yeah, no, that's 100%.
It's obscene.
Tez and Nick, that's actually one of the big problems that they've had with the blessing system, is that it's impossible to remove blessings. At least it's not obvious how you remove blessings. My pitch has basically been, you need to do this at some point, because there are some weapons that really shouldn't have certain blessings. And
we maybe don't need weapons with fucking 10 blessings. 3 of them being stagger related.
Yeah, they can change them in the back end, and the way you do it is you just make a list of 2 blessings that this blessing will get turned into for free, and you get refunded the cost of a re-blessing, whatever it gets changed into and 1 lock removed, for every single weapon you have that's affected. And so it means, worst case, you end up as asset neutral and with a free re-choice of what the blessing is, and best case, you actually make money, because you either get something that you want, or you can re-roll it something that you want.
I like what Keck said, especially the second part. I agree with that guy. He's pretty smart. Remove all locks.
Oh, yeah. Remove the locks. 100%. But like...
More impact from my Devil Claw. Waiter. Could I get Thunderstrike on that bad boy, please? Ah, yes. A little bit of Hammer Blow. Maybe a bit of Vicious Slice. Ah, yes. Waiter, please.
I love trauma.
100%. Like, this is the other thing, too, is that stagger, at the moment, there's too much stagger cleave. And so this is like a weird niche thing, but it actually makes a really big difference. And it's just like... a lot of weapons, like the Devil Claw, actually. The Devil Claw benefits from this. The Devil Claw has way too much stagger on its cleave. There is cleave, like, fall off on stagger, but, like, your safety in a horde situation...
It's like 7... You're controlling, like, what, 7 dudes?
Yeah, you're controlling way too many guys. And it's also... finesse cleave needs to be a stat. Because, at the moment, it's really stupid how you can control the number of targets you hit, but you can't control... the distribution of damage between those targets, and if you're using a finesse weapon, it inherently is penalized for no reason. And my view on the on this is like, weapons with finesse should be scaling finesse cleave. Remove one of the shitty bars that no one cares about, like defenses or whatever, and put finesse cleave on it. And this is actually one of the things that I liked about brutal momentum. Brutal momentum is finesse cleave.
Yeah.
But the thing about brutal momentum, I think, is you just need to make it not a... it's no longer a blessing. My view is I love it as a blessing. I think it's almost impossible to balance.
It has to be an intrinsic property, so you can tune it on a per weapon basis. So you can't have
exactly.
4 crushers dead in one swing.
Yes, because there's no way that a combat axe can ever compete. Like, with brutal momentum working as it currently does, the axes as they currently exist cannot... Like, you have to take BM. And my view is, build it into the weapon, balance the weapon around it. It's how the weapon should feel.
I agree.
And
then you could have like different effects. Like, sorry to cut you off, but like the light attack of the anti-axe like absolutely should not have like the quad decapitation potential of an Atlas heavy one. And so that needs to happen on a per weapon basis. Yeah.
Exactly. And then when you mouse over the moveset, it says headsman 1. This can pass through if you instantly kill an enemy with a weak spot hit, it will hit one further enemy with. But the thing about stagger cleave is like one of the reasons that stagger, and actually damage distribution in general. So I would want power, specifically power, to improve your damage distribution. And the reason for this is just like, if I'm swinging harder, I'm rolling more like I'm literally hitting the second guy proportionally harder.
It's the berserker thing. Your sword is going so hard through the first guy that the following dudes get even the guys that your sword wouldn't be like cleaving through in real life, like they'd be getting shoved to the side like way harder because you're a fucking madman swinging that thing. Totally.
And that's I think because there are some weapons which have had a big well, okay, I mean that's the problem is that there are different there like stagger cleave is in theory something that's tuned, but it's not tuned. And also, I think stagger blessings. If you address this, one of the things that you'd want to do with stagger blessings is I would want stagger blessings to be meaningful. You would make it so they don't only increase stagger, but they improve stagger cleave distribution as well. So it's like you're actually tuning up both parts of the weapon stagger potential that you care about, which is that you care about, you could care about. And I think you see this with the new knife and knives in general. Like it is surprisingly safe to swing a knife into a horde, because realistically that knife should not be flinching a zombie on second target. You might have hit like an R3 or something, but he's a dead zombie and you've just hit him with a small knife. Like, exactly. But that would be like basically the stagger distribution falling off to 0 or very low. And I agree. And so what I'm suggesting is that a lot of weapons would have stagger fall off that was so bad that by target 3 or 4, you're below the threshold for staggering almost most mobs other than like groaners, right?
And you're forced to move. You're forced to dodge now.
Well, exactly. And I think that there's a because the other thing too is that pushes are so aggressive in this game at the moment because you are under so little pressure a lot of the time. Or you're under pressure where it's not like if you're under a lot of melee pressure, what that means is you've got a bunch of big fat guys who don't care about pushes anyway, so it doesn't help you. So you know what I mean, like or rages or whatever. And this thing about finesse cleave too is like it should be the case that your flat cleave is fine for taking a bunch of heads off, like little gooners. But if you've got 2 elites and you could line up a diagonal brutal momentum, that's what you want to do because it's better. Just basically, if something is hard to do, it should be more rewarding. Like, this is a PvE game. You want to make the most fun and sick things to do the most rewarding. Because then you're funneling people towards doing the fun stuff. And too much stuff in this game is, like, the good stuff is dumb. It's not fun to do. And you mentioned speedrunning. I don't think there's a way that they can fix speedrunning. I mean, obviously they can make it less rewarding in some ways, but I think fundamentally... the game.
I think there is a super dumb brute force way to do it.
Yeah, but I see. So I've thought about something, and my feeling is very often a lot of these they end up catching out people who, you know what I mean, like they tend to introduce bad feeling exceptions. Is my feeling, but
the wall.
Yeah,
the wall.
The wall.
The wall.
I mean, I think there's a couple of things that I would do. One of them is just basically stealth is not really an integrated mechanic at the moment, where enemies don't have proper stealth reactions. Particularly stuff like rages. If a rager sees you go into a stealth field, he should be swinging at the air and trying to hit you. The enemies, like, they act like they have amnesia. Instead, they need to have defined behavior for what to do if your target goes invisible.
They should give chase for a bit. Like
they should try and find you.
You should never be able to use the stealth in a game like Vermintide or Darktide as an escape tool. Like as a I'm out of there button. It should always be priming an attack, priming an offensive, and I think that's when the fantasy works best too, because it's like you look at them like you're an assassin. Like, what does the assassin do? He goes invisible, he finds the guy, he slits his throat, and then he's out of there. He's out of stealth. He's like back there.
And
with a
if
commando,
if you vanish in front of a bunch of shooty guys, they should shoot the air.
yeah, to keep blasting. Like straight up, keep aggro on the guy. Like, don't drop the aggro the moment the button is pressed. Like, I should have to keep playing the game for a couple seconds, even though I'm stealth. It's ridiculous the way it works right now. It's so fucking dumb.
Here's where there's a couple of other things that they should do. The first is that demons should detect you if you're within 5 meters of them, because they literally can see your soul.
What about the just like the elite guys? Like, what are all those optics? Like
dogs
those
can sniff
optics
you.
for? Yeah.
Yeah, dogs can sniff you, and snipers, if you go invisible in line of sight of a sniper, the sniper says a voice line, switches to a green laser, and they can see you.
Yeah, exactly.
Stuff like that. And it's just like, one of the big problems at the moment is that if you go invisible, literally everything in the game can't handle you while you're invisible, when realistically it's like, there's tons of things they can do. Like, the bomber would just throw a grenade where you were to be like, I'll find you. The enemies don't have hunting behavior. They don't, and this is partly just a conceptual thing. It feels so gamey. Like, I've dropped aggro, lol. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's such a game thing.
Man.
Yeah, exactly. And that's an example of where I
Oh,
really think
changing spectra, and then you hear the. It's like
Yeah,
this.
exactly.
He's going Splinter Cell on you, and like the hell gun, like he turns on a laser on that, and he's gonna fuck your ass. Like, I think we absolutely need stealth to just not be a disengaging. We need stealth to not be invisibility.
Well, but so this is the thing is I really wanted it to be for the vet that his stealth would only work within like outside 5 meters. But the idea is that the smoke grenade would give you 1 second of like complete vanish, and so if you wanted to escape, you'd have to smoke nade and then stealth away. You know what I mean?
I like
so
that idea a lot
them
because
like the Batman poof.
because I mentioned the fantasy of the assassin, but the fantasy of the commando is like he adopts low profile. He goes in for an ambush, and then it's all guns blazing. He's Sly Marbo, he's stabbing dudes in the eye slits, he's shooting guys with his autogun, and it is no longer stealth. And it shouldn't be stealth when Sly Marbo is 5 meters in front of you screaming.
And so the idea there is that because the nades have the micro stagger, when they re-engage, they can't see where you are, so they and they like got confused when you did it, so that's why they don't just immediately hit you. But I mean, this is
then
like,
you're introducing the problem of having the smoke nades being what they are right now, which is just like, if these things didn't block fucking vision, dude, they would be like, people would realize like how game breaking it is to have like a mass just like turn off enemy AI things. Like, it would just be fucking stupid, man.
Also, some enemies should have, like Stalkers should have red laser sights that they can activate and they can see much further in smoke. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right? Enemies that are hunting enemies should be much less affected. Dogs should not give a shit.
Maybe smoke nades just shouldn't be in the game. Maybe like giving a mass disruption tool like that to a class that can regenerate grenades is a really stupid idea, and it's completely eating into the territory of stun grenades, which it can't fucking regenerate, and he gets 3 of them. You know.
I've tried. I hate smoke grenades for me are just like a classic example of something that sounds fun until you ask what would it mean for these to be good enough to take, and the answer is they're broken.
Yeah,
and they are either broken or useless. There's no midpoint, right?
It's like that in a lot of design with the game. I feel like if the smoke nades were just a little bit more usable, they would like straight up be like free invisibility on any active ability.
On release, they had like a 50-second duration. When they were first being tested, they had a really long duration, and they basically just turned off ranged enemies. And the thing about it is like, and again, it's like, I'm not saying that they thought that was balanced. I just mean that was, they just put it in as like the initial numbers. They were just like, and we gave feedback on them, and like some people overestimated how good they were, which is why they ended up being released with like a 10-second duration, which was useless. But my view was just I can see how you could make these usable. I don't think they will be fun to play with or against, and I don't think part of the problem is that smoke grenades present an issue with future enemy design. Any ranged enemy is completely cancelled by smoke grenades.
Yeah, it's like literally turning off a part of the game.
Exactly.
It's like we had this retard who came in chat and who like was arguing that being able to block shots with the shield, taunting enemies to walk to you in melee was like a good thing and like a good support ability, and he didn't understand how that like literally broke what the enemy was supposed to be. And it's what smoke grenades do. They effectively stop existing as ranged enemies when you can do that.
Also, like,
And also, dude, what you posted in chat, I was just gonna say, I think having so many grenade regen talents in the vet seems like a complete cop out for not being able to come up with interesting ideas. It makes balancing his grenades fucking impossible. Like it's way too strong. There's way too many like grenade related talents, and we have the value meme, but that shit needs to fucking go, man. It's not interesting. It's not fun.
So this is like for exploit weakness and the commando side. What I wanted was for there to be one of the upgrades to it, and I know why this didn't happen, right? There's a limit to how much random shit they can take in as it requires some effort. But what I was like is I want there to be a way to get grenades back for each of the trees that is contingent on you actually performing a sensible, skilled gameplay task.
So true.
And for him, melee kills on elites would give you a grenade back, or up to a certain number. You balance it around a number, like every 5 or something. But he doesn't get passive grenade regen.
Because the problem is everything is super passive right now, and you can just abuse the fuck out of it. It's like, okay, you get a grenade every minute, you get 5% on elite and special kills. It's like, dude, do you know how many fucking elite and specials you kill? Like, demo team is busted, man. Like, you should not have a valid playstyle. You should not have as a valid playstyle to walk into a melee only game mode and just fucking keep spamming the instant kill, indefinitely regenerating thing that sticks to its targets. Yes. It's ridiculous. I like your idea.
I wanted was for exposed weakness to instead of being rending, it was your next grenade on that target has 100% rending and sticks.
And I kind of like the idea too of like it's the commando, like he walks up to a guy, punches the knife like straight through the windpipe and steals a grenade off the guy. Yeah, exactly. I kind of like the idea.
So the name of that node is I'll take that.
Yeah, no, it's cool. It's really cool. I have a little riddle for you. You want to say something that you do the thing that your class fantasy is supposed to be doing, and you get a grenade. What is the class fantasy of the middle tree again, Crab? You get grenades when you tag something.
Well, so this is the thing. It's like basically the problem with tagging is that. So my beef with the middle tree right now, I don't want them to change it at the moment because I have a strong suspicion that whatever they change it to will be worse. And I don't mean that in a rude way. I just mean it's like
keep it as is. We'll work on it later and like have a comprehensive fix for it. Yeah.
I know what I would want to do with the middle tree, which is super involved. It would be stuff like you have 4 different. Basically, you know how there's multiple pings. You have 4 different abilities with a 60-second cooldown on each of the pings, and so the go there ping becomes. Everyone in your team can move towards that without being slowed 20% faster for 5 seconds.
What happens when you stack them? What happens when you stack multiple commissars now? I think that would be a problem.
The idea is those buffs wouldn't stack. I mean, you just straight up make it so that if you want to play with other people, you have to coordinate, which makes sense, just like in real life. Yeah. You have to coordinate orders. That's
now fine. You've introduced a problem where you've given team-wide buffs to like someone. Like someone can give team-wide buffs, and so now it's a nightmare.
But the thing is, it already does. The problem is
it does. It's really bad. It's really bad. It is so bad, in fact, that I think focus target should not be like in the middle tree. Fuck the middle tree. Remove half the shit in it and make it like a diagonal. Like have a diagonal line that goes to each of the others, so you can take some stuff in the middle and then go to whatever thing you want.
Yeah, I have thoughts about it, but my point is just that what you do is you make it so that these are short duration, highly impactful buffs, but they require you to think about what it is you're trying to accomplish. Movement speed and slow and stun immunity for 5 seconds every 60 seconds. Isn't a passive global thing that you don't think you have like you can actually use that to help someone, right? You see someone getting caught out, you put it down and they can come back to the team, that kind of thing. And I would actually want these to be all quite short and in some ways quite niche. But the point is basically just that you actually want to see what your teammates are doing. Like it's just like with ammo packs. You should be able to throw ammo packs to your friends instead of it being survivalist. Like survivalist is you build up an ammo pack and then you can throw it to an ally, instead of it just being a passive thing, right?
Yeah.
And now you've taken something that's a boring, everyone gets free ammo to this person's playing with a veteran, they're out of ammo and they like get an ammo pack thrown to them across, like they feel like they're being helped, they're happy, the guy who threw it feels good because they made a decision, that kind of stuff.
What's wrong with team-wide buffs? They just tend to be extremely boring and to just be unnecessarily making the game easier, which is exactly what Focus Target does right now. Focus Target is just like, everybody just deals more damage for free. It's retarded.
The short answer with team-wide buffs is there's 2 big problems. The first is that people don't know when they have them. And so what it means is that players massively underestimate how strong they are. And so it means they always end up overpowered because in order to notice them, they have to be broken. And one way to look at it is, if you're an individual player and you get a 50% damage buff, you really notice that. If you're 4 players and you get a 12.5% damage buff, you might not notice that, but the outcome on the game is the same. And so what you're basically doing is you're making the player's ability to notice what they're benefiting from much lower. And so if you want players to feel like it's doing something, it has to be incredibly stupid. And
the fact that it's just like team-wide, I just find that like so fucking lame. But there's also, no decision, no prioritizing a target. Just...
But also like the user experience thing, right? So you want the person who's playing with this to be able to react to the fact they're being buffed. Do you put an aura on the edge of the screen? Do you put more bullshit on the screen? Hey, you're powered up now. Like
FOV change. Let's go.
Exactly. Everything about it is not a good idea, and this is why the point I think of the Commissar fantasy should be like there should be the tag mechanic, not the way it currently works, but it's like you get 5 seconds of absolutely kill that guy every 60. That's it. That's all you get. You get one priority target, and someone says, "Well, I don't get that much value." Well, you've got the other 3 options too. But the point is you're having to actually make decisions.
You know what I actually like? Okay, I think here's how you solve the Commissar fantasy. What you do with the Commissar fantasy is, first of all, the tree, fuck all this like excellent passive stuff, like that's just good shit to have. You make the tree a bit shorter, there's less excellent stuff in it, and you make a bonus that is going to be only good if you are like actively communicating like in a team, like something where you are preparing people for the buff that's going to come out, you're telling them when the buff is going to come out, and it's like something, if you take it in a duo, it's going to be devastating and super efficient, but at the cost of like kind of gimping yourself, rubbing you off something. And I think that would be neat, you know.
Yeah,
like it's something that people should feel like it's always going to be niche, and they can just go into a pub and like dominate with it, which like at the moment focus target is just like such a fucking fantastic buff, and the fact that of course it's team wide, so you get it as well, is like dumb. Like of course it's just going to be stupid.
Because the other thing too, and this is just like a background thing, I think most of the people on the playtest agree with this. Everyone wants Survivalist to go. The problem is that Survivalist is propping up the game in a low key way at the moment for pub play, which is basically that you know, briefly there was a golden period where it was dropped to 0.5%, and
in pubs around Alabama.
That would but this was not, you know, it didn't end up being a problem. It's just that I think it felt like enough basically, and the thing about Survivalist is the game doesn't actually have a proper ammo economy at the moment, and the spam from basically the AI director spam and the sheer number of elites that you're spamming have made on elite triggers particularly problematic. And you know that thing where you get the dog pack and it instantly gives you full ammo pack?
I mean, it's we go back to this thing. It's like perilous combustion, like all the stuff that like the more you pump, the more intensity there is, the stronger it gets. These should be nipped in the bud because they are a massive fucking problem. Like the cooldown reduction on Vet. You do not have cooldowns on Vet when you're playing high difficulties. Like, you're just murdering specials left and right. You're just shouting and shouting, constantly pissing deafness, making yourself invulnerable.
Yes.
It makes... like, the grenade spam is fucking terrible. Like, you just shit out so many grenades on higher intensity matches. It's just...
Oh yeah, and it's stuff like, you know, if you take the CDR on special kill, you moved it to commando, you made it on special or elite kill, and you make it on melee weak spot kill.
Now you've got something cool.
It's way better. But the thing about the
also, you remove range stuns, so I don't get constantly rubber banded and like knocked out of my sprint while I'm going to hit the gunner on the head.
Yeah, so this is like stamina should be more important, because one of the things about guns in real life is they're not very good at stopping people sprinting. That's why the concept of stopping power exists. Stamina, when you get shot while sprinting, it should drain your stamina, and you get slowed when you're out of stamina and you're sprinting under fire. That should be what it is. Like, it shouldn't be a stagger. It shouldn't interrupt your action state. It should basically just be there's a certain amount of like this you can take before you're beginning to slow down.
If you aren't like taking the proper defensive measures, you are going to take damage. You aren't going to be like fucking stunned, and we're not going to make your defensive measure just like not work abruptly like on a binary. Like, it's so frustrating to get knocked like out of a sprint that you wanted to do a slide with, and it's just like now you're just out in the open, and then now your evasive maneuver is going to be you get rubber matted the fuck in place while desperately trying to move, and nothing functions. It's the most frustrating thing imaginable, or you die.
Right,
it's a 100 to 0.
Just quickly go back to ammo. This is like my fantasy. I have pitched this, but I know it's going to be some way off if it even ever gets taken seriously. But what I would really like to do with ammo is simply this: ammo. This survivalist no longer exists. basically each of the 3 vet trees have ways to get back ammo that are specific to the particular tree. But here's how it works. You now get ammo only from ranged enemies. When you kill a ranged enemy, they have a small chance of dropping a clip. This is true across all enemies all the time. This has 2 consequences. The first is you don't end up in the death spiral, which is where you're having the AI director spawn huge numbers of enemies and you just run out of ammo and you can't move forwards because you're now out of ammo permanently. But it means that the following thing happens. The first thing is melee enemies, you're spending a resource to shoot them. You don't get the ammo back for that. Ranged enemies, you always get regular shooter, grenade. So regular shooters knockback / stun. I don't know about this, but what there was in patch 14 and sometime between patch 13 and 15 on test, something about, and this is related to, I think, the stutter and various other things that has got much worse. There were, like, the way that the knockback on the gun, this is why the gunner knockback got nerfed by 70%, by the way. This was like a band-aid fix to the problem that the game engine was really not handling micro stutters and interrupts and stuff. It wasn't introduced in patch 15. I imagine it's just that they were noticing it because Grenade Tinkerer was fixed, probably, and also I imagine that it takes a while.
I didn't notice it getting any worse. Like, it feels just as bad as it's always been. Except now the connection is like bad. Like, the servers just kind of shit themselves regularly, so it's even fucking worse.
Yeah, and this is not hallucination. This is definitely something that has changed. I think in the way the netcode handles it, because there was some situations. Did I ever show you this clip of? Well, I can't say that. But anyway, basically, I had a couple of situations where I got stun locked from 100 to 0 by 2 gunners at point blank range, and 2 rounds of chastise were eaten. And 5 dodges vanish into the ether instantly. And like, this is not something, like, it could very occasionally happen, but it's to the point, like, that's why the gunners have lost all their knockback. And it still happens. I've got a clip of me being stuck against a wall for 10 seconds, mashing every single button on my keyboard, being unable to move before this nerf. And that wasn't how it worked before, because there's something about how the server is like correcting your dodges or your actions in there's something that's being synced that didn't used to.
It has clearly happened between patch 13 and 14, because the thing I immediately noticed with patch 13 is, wow, dogs feel really good. Patch 14 happens, they no longer function properly 100% of the time, and they get unpushed, and your dodge, like, the game will literally roll back your push and your dodge in some cases. We've lost an Excise Vault Studio to that. I swear to fucking God, it makes me lose my mind that we had something work for a day and a month later it was gone. Also, you said something extremely smart, and I want people to pick up on how smart what you said was about, like, the ammo being given on ranged enemies and that being a cost for melee enemies. One of the big problems right now, Psyker included, is that melee enemies do not get to be melee enemies 90% of the time if you're playing the game optimally. And that would help solve it. I think both the melee enemies need ways. Like, why can't the Rager, like, deflect shots? Like, he fucking hits the air.
So the Rager, to me, Ranger and the Bullwark are the 2 enemies that most need a rework, in my opinion, at the moment.
Yes.
And my pitch for the Rager rework, the Dreg Rager...
On the money with that one. I would also add Beast of Nurgle to that list.
Yeah, Beast of Nurgle, though...
And to a lesser extent, the Skep Captain needs help.
But for me, basically, I'm just like, the bosses are icing on the cake. Because to me, it's like, Ragers are meant to be this core part of the combat loop, and they really are dysfunctional at the moment.
And they fail at it.
But for me, the big thing about Ragers, I want Dreg Ragers to be faster and actually have a gap closer. And so the idea is that Dreg Ragers are less armored, they get up in your face, and they're really fast. And then Scab Ragers, they always spawn with a club offhand. They don't have the gap closer, they're slower, they're tougher, they have carapace chest plates. So you can't just like ammo dump their chest. And they, basically, this is imagining that you've reworked them to have like the block mechanic and stuff. And
they put the club in front of their face, let's go.
Oh no, that was actually, I suggested that they cross their weapons in front of their head while they're advancing, not realizing this was in Killing Floor, and someone was like, oh, that's in Killing Floor, and now I'm like, I hate the idea because it sounds like I copied it. But I came up with it without knowing it was
It's
there.
a good idea. It's a good idea.
Exactly. And so basically what I want is for the melee enemies to actually be, there should be some advantage to engaging them in melee. If you see what I mean. Like, it should be riskier because they can hit you, but rewarding, you can kill them faster.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the things I like about the Devil Claw parry at the moment, is it's like you are actually rewarded for letting a Rager act if you know what you're doing. The other thing too is that I would want it so that the Scab Ragers, like, basically you would introduce a time blocking thing that would allow you to break their combos for 2 consecutively timed blocks. There's a bunch of other stuff I want to do with blocking, reduce the stamina cost as well, because I basically just think that if you are someone who is facing 4 Ragers and you perfectly time every single block, you should win. You just did something difficult.
You shouldn't be punished because you were playing passively. Also, I think the push, like in a push attack, I want that to be like have much less block cost, maybe even give you stamina if you like hit something through an attack.
Yes, no, this is like the other part. One of the
And one
system. I
thing-
want push counter to be a mechanic, and dueling swords have a built-in push counter if you've countered something.
because like you're
counter attack.
you're dueling.
Exactly.
You're like deflecting the blow while you're attacking. It's like the core fantasy of like being a swordsman. Also, the parry, like the riposte right now, very frustrating to get stunned out of a riposte because one dude did a double swing because he has one fucking double swing as a second attack of his combo, even though it doesn't look that different from the other ones. And there's also a case like Shikobi murdered me the other day, and it was re-educational. I was waiting for a crusher to overhead me. There was 2 crushers. One was off to the fucking side, aggroing someone else, Shikobi. And I parry the crusher perfectly, and 2 frames into my parry, Shikobi drags an overhead into me, and I'm dead instantly. And I want the parry to have a little grace period where anything that hits you right after you've done a perfect parry, it is also getting perfect parried. It's like no cost. It's like it's a freebie. Because there's a lot of situations where it's like, okay, I really want to use my fucking parry, but someone just murdered me because they dragged something into me. Or you want to parry like an overhead. That's happened to me. You want to parry an overhead, and there's a dude behind you. No backstab sound. He hits you. You were parrying, so it consumes the parry. You're no longer doing a perfect parry, or even worse, you get taken out of the parry window because you're fucking attacking. Actually, like it consumes the parry straight up, and you just fucking eat the overhead and die instantly. Yeah. And that feels bad.
I would do something a little. I would split the difference and do 2 different things. The first thing is I would give that like roughly 1 or 2 frames of grace. Like you say, just like, but very short.
Not very short. I want it to be, mind you, it's not like half-second thing. It's like super fucking short.
But at the moment, the parry locks out reparry when it triggers. What I would want
a good idea, so you can react to it.
Exactly. It's not that it locks it out, but you need to have a separate parry input with the correct timing for every attack that hits you. So if your timing is really on point, and mashing doesn't work. That's the key thing. If
right now, the game incentivizes mashing. Do you want because of the? You remember the phantom parry we discovered when you were last on stream?
Yeah.
That's I mash every parry. And it works, because sometimes you'll throw a parry, turns out it's not a real parry, so then you throw the real one, and now you're good. Fucking horrible.
I 100% agree. And
it should completely desensitize that.
Well, but so mashing parry is bad against rages, because a timed parry actually beats the double swing. But this is a really dumb interaction.
Dude, timing that in a game, good fucking luck, dude.
No. It's one of those things where it's like, I like that is a thing, but it's not something that they should be balanced around, because they shouldn't have the double impact on the double swing to begin with. Because the only time anyone notices it is specifically if they've done an early parry and they get hit through it. And
that's assuming they even pick up on what happens. Because sometimes people like, why do I get hit through my parry? It's like, oh, because it's 2 hits, not 1. I
100% agree. I think that rages should have shorter combos where directional dodges work. But basically you have to think about how you want to dodge them. There's fewer of them. They're more aggressive. And you have, but also like, so the idea is the scab rages with the club would have a block break attack, right? So it's like if you were just mindlessly trying to block through everything they're doing, you get guard broken by the scab rages, but the dreg rages just go ape on you. They just try and break your block by just pounding you. And that way you then have quite a different feeling from both of them. The dreg rages would be aggressive. They have a gap closer. They'd be more like much more aggressive and disruptive in melee, but they wouldn't be able to deal with blocking. So quite close to the plague monks in VT2 in the sense that they just go ape. But like if you don't panic, you can deal with them really easily. And then the scab rages are slower, tankier. You have to engage them more. But the upside is they are slower. They don't jump into you. You know, you have more time to deal with them.
I like that. Good differentiation between, because right now, what's the difference between the two? Oh, it's just the armor type.
Yeah. I mean, so this is the general thing about the enemies. There are very few enemies that actually disrupt your formation by flanking. Like enemies tend to just come from the direction where you know they're coming from, and the only exception is specialists. And you know, particularly when you mention stalkers, this is one of the things that I very much want, is for there to be enemies that are intentionally flankers. I know, particularly stuff like rages. You know, one of the big problems with rages is that, you know, they're meant to get into you. They but they often just spawn all in one direction. They just run at you down a hallway, and it's like, okay. But then the reverse of that is, okay, you spawn them on top of the team, and it's complete bullshit because there's 10 of them, and you didn't happen to bring an AoE stun, and you're just in the middle of 10 overlapping undodgeable hit zones, and fun.
You don't have a trauma at the end of Habdraco POV, dude. Yeah. I think when it comes to like the flanking stuff, it would solve a lot of problems too in terms of enemy behavior. Where, let's just say you're in that, you know, Sycorax, when you get into the library part, there's like this lane on the left that's just like one straight line that's very thin. but it has an area just to its right, like it's a drop down and like loops around. Instead of forcing 20 melee elites to like bunch up into one unreadable ball, out of which could come a fucking insta-kill attack that you could never see coming, because the fucking Mauler is just hidden inside the Bulwark, Mauler, Crusher, Rager hybrid. And instead you just have like a continuum of them that like make the decision to path around you. Like they're like, okay, we're gonna be coming from the other side. That would both make the game more interesting, more dynamic. It would incentivize movement, smart movement, because currently mobility is too strong, but not in an interesting way. People aren't kiting by using the geometry and using the drop downs and going around loops and watching the timing of where the enemies are, where they're going, so they don't kite into a fucking crusher. Right now, mobility is literally you grab a knife or you grab a blast pistol and you fucking leg it, and nothing can catch you.
And it's also just like, this is one of the other things about enemies like not being quite fast enough, is that like, I know that it sounds weird to say in real life, but it's like the number of enemies that you can just literally walk away from.
Yeah,
it's like, it shouldn't be as easy, because like, that's the other thing too, is that like one of the things that the current state of the spawns has exposed, in my opinion, a lot of people blame this on stealth and a bunch of other stuff, but it's also just that the enemies aren't very good at dealing with you moving.
Yes.
And this is especially true of ranged enemies, and this is where like it gets a bit contentious, because basically people don't want ranged. Okay, this I'm not saying this is you, but I'm saying in general, my feeling about ranged enemies is that, well, exactly, Rafik, but that's the thing, is that you have this split between enemies doing, either they behave super nicely and they do a very slow melee attack while they're stationary, or they do a melee attack that happens to also be a gap closer, and they teleport up your anus from 10 meters away in a way you can't predict. And both of those feel like bullshit.
And then they deal the damage 10 meters away. The difference is in the ladder, you can, like, if you know what you're doing when you're running away from them, you just, like, throw one dodge and, like, you're good. Like, you just know the bruiser is gonna, I don't like, fucking throw his club at the back of your head as a melee attack, and you can see it coming. No, there's a huge problem with the fact that, like, speedrunning right now isn't too strong just because of stealth. Stealth just happens that you have, like, this aggro dump, so you can afford it to be retarded, and you can do it on your own.
Stealth is just broken, right? You know what I mean? But it's like...
But you can just run away. Yeah. Like, the optimal fucking... Like, I can just run past the world even when I'm playing Diacelit. Like, nothing is stopping me from doing that, yeah.
Yes.
And I think what you're about to do with, like, range enemies is that people don't want them to control your movement. I think they should control movement, but through the damage they deal, the resource they dump, that being, like, the stamina, it shouldn't be through stunning you from 100 to 0 because they prevent you from doing anything.
Yes, and there's also...
But they need to be threatening.
Yeah, there's also some other things, too, like... For example, in real life, the reason why you don't turn away from someone who's hitting you in melee and then sprint away is because if you turn your back to someone while they're holding a weapon, you are dead.
They've got the momentum advantage. Like, in real life, you're turning around, like, you're making your retreat. The guy just keeps charging. He catches you.
And so there's stuff like, you know, if you're dealing with Dreg Ragers, it should be the case if a Dreg Rager is behind you, you get hamstrung. The moment you turn around, there's a triggered attack. You don't need to see the animation because it's happening behind you. You did something stupid. And someone says, okay, well, I'll just dodge away. And it's like, good, but the point is you're having to commit to something.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of this stuff where a lot of the melee chaff... And the other thing too, people often say...
Give it a sound effect, give it a special animation, give it a voice line. And it would be, like, super cool.
Also, this is the other thing too, is that Rages do slow you a lot on their hits. But at the moment, this is really frustrating. It's just annoying.
It's like you're getting tar pitted inside a tornado of swords you can't dodge around. It's just...
Yeah.
It's problematic.
Yeah, and I think that this also goes to just like, if you just sprint through a level, even on a vet with just, you know, the 5% movement speed thing, you can still get past most of the groups. And it's one of those things where it sounds a bit goofy to say it, but ranged enemies really do need to be more dangerous. They need to be fewer of them, and they actually need to be able to deal with the very simple thing, which is if you run into a room full of 8 professional soldiers with guns and you try and sprint from one side to the other, they shoot you.
Yeah.
Like, and people say, I don't like being shot. And it's like, yeah, no one likes being shot. But these have to be a play piece where they can work to do the thing they're meant to do.
They have to exist as a ranged threat. The problem is that right now there's like fucking 20,000 of them, and the way they're a threat is that they insta-jib you. Like, you're just like stunned in place, right? But if they did it through like dumping your stamina, like if you try to sprint across a room, and they're just shutting you. I like the idea of it spending your stamina.
Yeah, I mean, because the other thing, basically, I think one of the more frustrating things about this game is what's been good about what's happened in the last year is a lot of the ways that you lose control have been dealt with. This has made the game easier, But like to me, it's like this game should be difficult because you're fully in control of your character and you're being required to do difficult things.
Exactly.
Instead of you've made one mistake and no, I think there is a point there too, which is that
He's
currently
onto something.
toughness is too good at tanking range damage for certain classes in a way where it's like, if fucking ogre and toughness DR and a bunch of other shit. And also, like, the relationship between toughness and how much stamina you lose when you're sprinting is like a really sensible thing to tie together. If you're sprinting while you're full toughness, it's like you've got head down, you're just, point to point sprinting or whatever, but you're out of toughness, you're panicking, you're out of, etc.
The relationship between sprinting and the range enemies, I would love it if it became like an active gameplay moment where you think about your charge. You're like, okay, I'm going to be heading into this room where there are this many range enemies, passing in front of that many range enemies, and then I'm going to stop there, I'm going to melee them, and then I'm going to recuperate, plan my next charge. Because right now, it's just spam slide.
Yes.
Don't engage, just fucking stay back, because like you are not you have the bad mechanic, or you zealot and you don't care, you just fucking run through them, and like it doesn't matter, they can't do anything to you because therapy twist is there, and you don't care about the damage it'll to you because you have cracked fucking toughness DR, cracked toughness gen, and you fucking murder them in 3 seconds. And just in case going into melee and extra super mega murdering them wasn't enough, you just fucking pull out the last pistol and just delete them from the map.
Yes, and I think so. One of the things is I want the basic ranged shooters, their burst, which is currently quite a slow 3-shot burst. I would speed that up by a factor of 5, so that the burst is really, really fast. And that might sound like a buff, but the reason for this is quite simple. At the moment, the amount of time that you're vulnerable to those shots is quite long, and so it means that if you're thinking about like how you actually mitigate range damage in this, it's like you have these blocks of iframes that you can opt into, and then you're vulnerable if you're spam dodging. The more spread out the enemy shooter burst is, the
more dangerous for you.
But also it's the less you can't understand the timing, because it's just so like it's just the threat is spread out over a whole second. Yeah. There's no time where you can be like, oh, I wanted to. So you make it so that the enemies are much more like they're basically doing a single shot. Keep it as a burst, that's fine, but make it so it's much faster, and that way exactly. And it's much more now. It's more like an event which you can react to individually. The second thing is. This is something where I think the amount of iframes you get or ranged dodge, just straight dodge, should be reduced, and I think sliding needs to not have full immunity for the entire duration unless you have a mechanic that allows you to do it, because at the moment, the complete immunity of it is far too competitive with engaging with what the enemy is actually doing. Yeah. It also reflects just like enemies will adjust their aim, right? Like,
and the flip side of that is that you're either fully immune because you're doing the slide, or you are in the death roll of being permanently locked into rubber banding in place, and you are in hell. There's never like a middle ground. It's really the worst possible outcome for both extremes, where you're never really engaging with these enemies in an interesting way on any front. And that's a shame.
Just as a note, like, what I'm saying, this is all just my shit. Like, some of this stuff I've submitted as feedback. There is absolutely no guarantee any of this will happen. A lot of these things that I'm talking about here, I have wanted for months, and I have mentioned for months, and they haven't happened. So you have to imagine. I don't mind slide being movement speed fast, because I kind of feel like the movement part of the slide is awesome. I just want it so that the part of the slide that makes you immune to ranged is the beginning, so that slide becomes more of a discrete action to counter a specific. It gives you more length of iframes than the dodge, right? But it's more of a commitment, and then you're a little bit vulnerable at the end of it. And that way, it's less of. It becomes more about the movement and more about. And then you could have stuff like in Zealot, right? You could have a node which was, if your initial slide dodges a shot, the rest of the slide makes you ranged immune. So
that way it stops, like, you no longer just spam the slide, you have to time it. It's like an active dodge. It's just much better. Yeah.
I see a muzzle flash, I can do a long immune slide, that kind of thing. I also really wanted, this is something that's terrible, but I've still really wanted, is just like have a blessing or a node which is like, for every bullet that you dodge while you're sliding, you slide faster. So you just slide towards the gunner and go.
And you fucking drop. It's like the Vanquish, like fucking booster slide. You drop kick the cocksucker going 60 miles an hour.
There is actually a blessing in the lure called like spiked boots, which is you do damage when you slide into enemies. It's not in the game, and I don't think but I was just like, I want this, but it shouldn't happen. But I also want it. But like, yeah, because I mean, if any of you have played like games like Bayonetta and Devil May Cry, like to me, the core thing is when you are having a game where you're able to interact with enemies, where your offensive actions and your defensive actions can happen at the same time. So in Bayonetta, it's like there's a thing called dodge offset, where basically you can do a combo and you can offset the dodge, so you can attack and defend at the same time. In
For anyone who doesn't know, dodge offsetting is when basically, let's just say you want to do like a light, heavy combo, like in Bayonetta. You can do light, you hold the light button down, you perform a dodge, and then it will like save your position in the combo, and you can continue the combo. It's a very interesting mechanic. It's in like every Platinum game, I think.
There's also something I really want is for attacks that have long combo strings, the fourth attack, or the fourth attack plus to be actually worth getting to, so that you're actually rewarded for continuously managing aggression without having to break the block. But anyway, but the thing is, like, there is this definite number of enemies in those games that is optimal. Like, when there's far too much stuff on screen, you're basically playing crowd control simulator, and you see this a lot in, like,
mash the dodge and like you spam the witch time thing, and it's like it kind of breaks down. Yeah.
Well, I mean, to be fair, in Bayonetta, you see this is non-stop infinite climax doesn't have witch time. So you have to hit the dodge on every single attack, and it's a fucking amazing game that no one has played. But anyway, with the DMC5,
didn't they?
Oh, people did, but most people didn't play long enough to get to non-stop infinite climax. Like, the funny thing about Bayonetta is the game is a 100-hour tutorial for non-stop infinite climax. And it's like such an amazing game, but it's also not... I completely understand why lots of people didn't like it, because it's for such a weird person. But that person is me. Anyway, the thing about DMC5 is that, like, in DMC5 you have launchers, right? So you take an enemy into the air, so you can combo them without being bothered by the enemies on the ground. And this is basically because, you know, the engagement is not possible. You can't combo one enemy on the ground with 5 other enemies hitting you. In Darktide, like a lot of the fights, you're dealing with too many threats for your brain to be able to actually deal with it. And what I mean by deal with it is you can... I'm not saying that you instantly die. I just mean you can't look at those threats and
you can't process
it. Exactly. You can't say, I'm going to do this for him, this to him, and this to him. And that ideal number is probably like 3, max 4. And by that, I mean 3, like, threats that require a response or some kind of conscious acknowledgement.
And Manu, like, that's kind of the brilliance of the Horde, is that it's good for the Horde, like the pure trash, to not require like an active response. Like, you can kind of autopilot, like, you know, you're treating it as a fluid. You're never looking at every individual groaner and shit. It's just like a fluid that you're kind of reacting around, and then you pick out the things in the Horde that you're dedicating cognitive load to and you're reacting to.
The Horde is the background noise of the game. They're like a task where which if you get overwhelmed and you don't pay enough attention, you can get tagged. But that's all it is. It's like a punishment for being overwhelmed. And I think that the issue with the too many enemies at the moment is that it's you end up with 2 different results. The fire grenades are actually an example of something that I think people haven't quite appreciated how stupid they are.
Oh, no way, they're
I think
retarded.
People have, probably,
they're so
but like,
dumb, dude.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, fire grenades have replaced the flamer. Because it's like, you know how
they have.
To say, how many times in a game do you need to pull out a flamer and full flame an entire horde? Is it larger than the number of grenades that you can have if you take fire nades and pick up? The answer is no. So it's like, why take the flamer to take the fire nade? And also, like, the fire nades damage versus unyielding. It's like, oh, is that some bulwarks? No, not anymore. But the thing about fire grenades is it comes back to, like, a lot of these things that we see at the moment, like the way the holy icon works, the stun grenades, and a bunch of other things. They're like number agnostic things to deal with it, because sometimes you do need that, right? Because this is a 4-player game, and if you're the last person standing, the game would be broken if it was the case that you could handle 4 players of pressure easily in all cases, right? But there's too many of them, and
they're too good.
They're too good, and also it shouldn't... The fact that so much of the pressure comes from raw numbers means that your ability to force people to pay attention to individual enemies is reduced. Like, if right now you did the rework I discussed with Rages, where you make them require more attention, they're more dangerous, they gap close, they hit you in the back.
You have 5 of them max.
And you spawned 12 of them. Like, that's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Dude,
we don't do that.
Friendly fire, baby. But the thing... But I think this is like... When I was first playing Damnation back in, like, the last year of December, and I was playing, like, duck and dive Deadshot with an autogun on release of the game, because I was a psychotic person. And, like, when there were just, like, 4 or 5 ranged enemies and you're out of cover and you're just, like, dodging between volleys, knocking people down, the stamina bars going up and down, it was just like, it was like playing a ranged melee combat game. It's like this ebb and flow. There's like threats, timing you're doing, and you can use line of sight and stuff. But now it's like,
and then the shooter room happened.
yeah, but also so many things in the game. The stamina recovery on taking damage, on wielding focus, blah 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 blah. All those things basically, again, it comes back to, if you have beautiful mechanics like that, you need to make it so the game funnels you towards those mechanics. And I think that what I like about the game at the moment is, if it, relative to where it is, where it started, you can do lots of stuff that you want, so you can be quite expressive, but the game isn't difficult enough in its core interactions for those interactions to feel meaningful. Like, a lot of the time you are just going like, oh, it's a bunch of shooters, and you're not really having to pay attention to what they're doing. You just go,
and there's fucking 30 of them anyway, so it's like
exactly. And then the spikes of difficulty, it's always stuff compounding, and usually things that are not quite difficult to predict. And that comes from sound not working, or the number of spawns just being out of order in a particular moment. Like, you're in a bad situation, and then there's 3 poxbursters right there or something.
3 chaos spawns.
And the thing is, exactly, and that should happen sometimes. But if those are the only spikes in difficulty you're having, the game becomes really, really frustrating.
The game should be harder without those spikes anyway. Like, in the first place,
because it's like you have
like a lot of the thing. Like, a lot of the thing we've discussed, like, so far, is ways to make the game, when there aren't 3 chaos spawns, more interesting, but like inherently more challenging.
Yeah, and to me, it's like the enemies have to be where they start, because it's the only way you can do it without just nerfing players. In the end, there are also some other things that
we got to nerf players, dude.
Well, but I mean, so to me, it's just like, there are going to be some more things that get nerfed, just because there's going to be bug fixes and various other things, I imagine. So if you think there are still some bugs in the player's favor, and there are still some things that probably are just, the numbers are wrong. But I think in the short run, part of it is just that the game is actually quite fun for a lot of people, just in terms of numbers. So, like, the game has recovered from where it was in summer. So I think there is not a massive desire to make the game dramatically more punishing. Like, there's very much a sense of, we just let it breathe a bit and just figure out what the next content we're going to do is. But I think it's probably the case that it's much, much easier to change enemies than players, from the point of view of the experience you're giving players, because you're basically just saying you don't know what you're going to encounter, but you still feel just as strong. I do think that there are nerfs that are necessary. I would be surprised if they happened in the way that I wanted. I think there may be a few more things that we can get chopped. I really, really want crit strings to be gone from high finesse weapons. There is no reason also guns should have crit strings if they're going to have 2.5 finesse or 2 finesse, whatever they have. The columnus isn't actually that much numerically better than the Grya and the Agri. It's just got the recoil is too controllable, and the other two don't have the recoil behavior they should have.
That's what I bring up every time. It's like, the problem with the columnus right now is the main problem is that it's a fucking laser beam, man. It's supposed to be this close range, like bullet hose, and you can just fucking crouch, like barely pull your mouse down, and just land like an entire mag into some cocksucker's dome.
And it's also like, what I wanted for the recoil patterns for them was basically to make it so that the columnus it would only give you the first shot on point. The second shot would already be climbing. The Grya would give you at max stab 3 shots on point before climb, and the Agri at max stab would give you 2 shots on point before climb. But if you moved, it has much worse moving recoil than the Grya. But if you're stationary, it's actually quite competitive.
I agree.
Whereas the Grya would have the best overall accuracy, and it would keep almost all its accuracy while moving.
Am I wrong, or am I a schizo, by the way? But it feels like they literally all have the same recoil. The only difference is like how much climb they get per shot.
Yeah, no, like they use the same recoil model mostly. There is some tuning that isn't there yet. The other thing I want, by the way, is I want the duck on IAGs to set your stability to 100% while you're ducked instead of changing the recoil pattern. And the reason for this is it basically just means that it doesn't matter what the stability of your gun is. There is a version of the gun you can learn and always have, no matter what the gun is. Because otherwise, it's like, if every gun behaves slightly differently, it makes it very difficult to develop an intuitive skill for the exact recoil. And I want it to be the case that, because the other thing too is that 100% stability on duck means that a high stab gun the reward for it is that you can be a more active player. But it means even if you have a gun with really low stab, you can still play with it. You just need to know when you need to duck. And because I think the other thing too is the more I thought about it, it's just like the issue of stability being this big RNG stat, and part of it is that you end up with weird shit like the Vrax 3 breaking under 60.
Oh Jesus Christ! Stability breakpoints.
Yeah, no, this is something that really frustrates me because my procedure for doing this would be get each gun white, have a 0 stab, a 20 stab, a 50 stab, and an 80 stab version, and then you test each of the numbers for each of the guns at all those variants after you change them with a no thing, make sure they don't break. Like, it wouldn't take too long to do, but it's just like it's something that I can't do it by carrier pigeon. You know what I mean? Like, I can't send messages saying we should change this and then wait a few days for a change to happen. Like, it needs to be hands-on. But like, the basic idea would just be that the Agri would be a little bit more like a DMR, where it would have this. If you're stationary, it wouldn't be a DMR, but it would be like you get 2 shots on a point, and those 2 shots are going to do a lot of damage. The Grier is this really nice feeling thing, and the Columnus. Like, people over-fixate on the damage of the Columnus is not that much higher. If you would just benchmark the point-blank DPS, if you put crit strings to one side, which actually do inflate it, especially if you're hitting body shots.
No, the issue is really just like it fucking sharts out ammo, and it has like fucking... Yeah, it's so accurate that it becomes retardedly ammo efficient.
Yes. And also there's a bunch of other weird mechanics, like Rending interacting with ranged fall-off, and also crit interacting with ranged fall-off is mildly frustrating.
I mean, it just makes it like its weakness that's not like it's not strong enough anyway. The weakness isn't like big enough to be like, this is a proper weakness. Like it gets invalidated by the thing the gun does. It's ridiculous.
Yes, and the thing about the way that the Rending interacts with autoguns, and also the floor crit thing, which I really want the floor crit thing to go, because it's low key, something that didn't used to matter, although it's always been there. Like, you could always one mag a Crusher with a Grier, even before this patch, and like patch 13 I have a video of it.
Yeah, real Deadshot Grier moment.
Exactly. And like, the thing about this is that if you take a gun that goes from doing no damage versus carapace to 20% or 10% of its damage versus carapace, you go from, I can't use this in this situation, to I can actually probably use this most of the time in most situations where there's a Crusher. The effect on the use of the weapon is to completely transform its role, or at least in a lot of situations. And so even though it sounds like a small amount, it's actually like, 20%.
Going from 0 to 20% is big.
Exactly. It's like enough that you're killing him in 3 seconds.
Yeah.
And that I think is the big thing about weapon differentiation for a lot of them, is that this is why all the rending in trees needs to go, and the crit floor rending needs to go, and the crit strings need to go. Recon lasguns also, by the way, they got murdered by the crit string stuff, but like, we want to do other stuff with them. So there's one tester who wants to have one of the recon lasguns be kind of like a burst fire carbine and some other stuff. He's got some cool ideas, and one of them be a little bit like a laser LMG. I
like your ideas of like having instead of using ammo, they have like heat, and they need to be vented. What I wanted is
it looks like a space badass, right?
It does. It so does. What I really wanted was something like there was a blessing in V2 called Barrage, which like you just use it on the fucking beam staff and you just held the beam on something, and the longer you held it, the more damage you dealt. I think that should be like an inherent property of this, like if it even says on the weapon just torrent because it's a fast firing thing. When I think torrent of laser, I think the dude I'm beaming in the fucking head is gonna start taking more damage because I am literally burning off his skull with the pounding of heated fucking light I'm sending into his face, dude.
Yeah, and I think that's the other thing too, is when you looked at
something like that should be there.
Yeah, well, but the thing with recon lasguns, right, is that they have quite small mags, in the sense that if you were to say like what the thematic idea of the lasguns is, it's just like, it wasn't broken that they had enormous magazines. It was just stupid that you had to take this in order to do it, and also that it was locked to one specific thing in one tree on one class, and so these guns were completely.
It murdered Recon Psyker.
Like, one of the things that I said they should do when they removed the crit strings is just straightforwardly double the size of the mags on all the recon lasguns.
What did they do exactly to the crit strings? I like barely look at them.
I think they're just too long.
They made them longer?
No, they used to be like 4 to 5, and now it's just 2. Yeah. And that was basically what the only exception to this is stubbers, because stubbers are stupid, where like they're balanced around having 6 crit strings but like 10 to 20% finesse. Oh yeah, this is another change that I really want, that I have no idea if it's ever going to happen because it's probably a lot of work, but I want finesse to be broken into 3 base profiles, where there's an accuracy finesse profile where 75% of the finesse damage is for hitting weak spots and only 25% for crit. So the crit reward for an IAG is lower because it's meant to be you're aiming.
A precision weapon.
Not exactly. It's not, oh, I rolled an RNG shot. And then you have the other end, you have stuff like Ogren clubs, where it's like, people often say Ogrens shouldn't have crit. And it's like, an Ogren shouldn't have finesse, but you know what he should have? I hit him a lot harder.
I think there should be some element of finesse. I think on every class, like Ogren is already so uninteresting in melee. I think like it's based around like.
I mean, like conceptually finesse, right? But like, no, yeah, this is again a pipe dream, but I just want it so that hitting an enemy's head does like 20% to 30% more damage baseline, and that's removed from the weak spot damage calculation for players. So
that's one thing we need. Make it on enemies so you can't like you can't do the retarded veteran shit where it's like, oh cool dude, I'm gonna grab precision strikes on every build because it's fucking 1 point down into the thing. Then I'm gonna go into marksman, and then I'm gonna go fucking take Desperado for some more melee finesse, and I'm gonna do stupid things.
Yeah, exactly. It's like too much of the weak spot bonus is in a number that the player controls. When in reality, it's just like the reason that hitting someone in the head is bad is because that's where your brain is. It's nothing to do with the gun. It's often that thing where you barrel stuff someone with a shredder auto pistol, and it's like this doesn't do any more damage. Whereas in real life, it's like ha ha ha. But the thing about finesse 2 is that like a gun like the shredder auto pistol would have an interesting niche if it was a 75% crit damage, 25% accuracy finesse weapon. You could build crit shredder as like a close range spray build, and that would give it a little niche because it has stuff that synergizes with that. At the moment, it doesn't really have.
It has cavalcade, which you never pick because it's useless.
Exactly. And like and that's the kind of thing where it's like, and you could do stuff like bleed on crit, cavalcade, shredder auto pistol. And that makes so much sense. You're like spraying fucking.
You're shredding them.
Yeah, exactly. And there's stuff like that. And I think a lot of the Ogren clubs too. What always bothers me about Ogren clubs is like the class is called the Skull Breaker, not the Clavicle Crusher, and you get no reward for hitting people in the head.
Well, at least you can hit the head now.
Dude, but like, I really do think that there are some people who want the game to be boring because
you hear that a lot in Ogren players. Like it's the appeal that it's dumb.
Dude, for me, it's especially with the shield. Like, when you think about a shield, if you're bigger than the other person, a shield is a weapon. And, like, it should be you're playing Shield Ogre and you just, like, slam a bunch of guys out the way, then hit a bunch of other guys with your... like, you know what I mean? Like, you're just
and it's like the moveset is literally just heavy one. To be fair, Fat Shark, like during the first 30 access release, did say like, yeah, we rework on the shield. So maybe next year, it will happen.
Yeah, no. I mean, what I really wanted, what I slightly pitched for it was like, the block counter mechanic of all the weapons that should have it. That should have it. So that when you do a push attack with the shield, you're like block pushing with the shield, and then you follow up. But
yeah.
Or even make the shield push like a shield slam. So you're not just shoving, you're like hitting them with the shield.
Yeah.
Which
I just wanted a shitload of like it has a mace attached to it. Like, why are all the mace attacks like pathetic? Like, what's the point of the push attack? We can just heavy one. It's so boring. Make it more interactive. Yeah. Like weave in like shield and mace combos. Like do cool stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, because it's like if you pick the shield, you've taken the only melee weapon in the game that lets you block range damage. You're committing to a lifestyle. Make it so it's actually flexible.
Yeah. I don't know. So much stuff. So many good things could happen if a certain nationality would just listen to you.
But to be honest, I think that to be fair, a very large number of good things have happened, and on the whole, I tend to view it as like a lot of. I think that all the designers that I've talked to have always tended to want to push things in interesting directions. Like I've never talked to someone who's been like, oh, I think rages are perfect as they are. The only exception was one person who was surprised when I mentioned the Lawbringer special should actually kill things. But I think it was more
yeah, should be a beanbag fucking around.
But I could kind of see exactly why he said it, but at the same time I'm like, my brother.
Yeah.
Mine brother.
There's one thing to go back quickly. I don't want to interrupt you, but you said something about how people not wanting the game to be interesting. I mentioned my weapon specialist, Lawbringer funny thing, and some people just don't bother with the swapping nonsense. Don't bother actually playing the game. Just grab as much crit chance as possible and just do scattershot manstopper and spam the click. And it's you will never see the light. You will never have a soul.
Yeah, and I think that's also and what that reflects too is part of that is a design problem in the sense that it shouldn't be as rewarding to do what they're doing. right? It should be,
Yeah.
relatively speaking, more rewarding. But again, it's like,
To be fair,
sometimes
the
I do
Flechette
feel...
Manstopper thing is a little silly because you don't have to actually kill things in melee. You can just bleed them with your shovel out, and it gives you stacks. But don't tell anyone.
But to be fair, I think the other thing too, though, is at a certain point you also have to just accept that there are always going to be players who are going to play your game in a way that is dumb, and you, if you're being too input intensive, yeah, I mean,
Input intensive.
Some people don't want to push buttons in the game.
It's a weapon. It's an input intensive game, man. It's like it should be. Fuck yeah, dude. Look at Combat Blade, man. Make everything like the Combat Blade. Boom, made it.
No, I think you're right, and I think partly this is why I'm slightly gloomy about the question of speedrunning. Is to me it just feels like, for some people, if you have a reward system, a reward structure in your game, if it's loot in Path of Exile or it's like plasteel and end of mission resources in this game or whatever, fundamentally there are some people who are going to play because they are motivated by the carrot on the stick that the game is presenting to you. And partly this is because a lot of games, so many games in fact, like think of all those single player games that give you like an achievement, a reward, a bar to fill. Like games are full of like extrinsic motivation where they present to you, here is the reward structure of the game and you want to see it.
Yeah.
And I think if a player like that is always going to find a way to play a game in a bad way, and you all you can do is make it so that it's not so dominant. It is. I want to be clear. It is playing the game in a bad way. The old counterfire shredder power sword playstyle. You're playing the game wrong. Right now, focus target plasma spam power sword. You're playing the game wrong. You're actively robbing yourself of any of the mechanics that make Darktide special. And that's the horrible thing with Darktide, is that there is no game. There is no game, no first-person shooter on the planet that has as much mechanical, as big a wealth of mechanical things that it's got going for it, while also having such a horrible extrinsic way to reward the player to make sure that people do not want to engage with it at all. Exactly, and I think the other thing too is that if you have systems like that there, it also trains the player base. It makes people think in those terms because that's how they're engaging with the game. And then it means if you try pushing things in a different direction, you've trained your players to confuse the reward the game is giving them
or the game.
In the game with the game itself. And it's like the reason that I play Darktide and not another game is because it is fun to push the buttons. And it's why it's like sometimes, and this is why it's like, at the moment, I am the thing about the crafting system, it is 100% the case, and I if someone from Fat Shark is listening, sorry, but everyone I've talked to has said that they are all internally not happy with the crafting system at the moment. Why that has not been addressed immediately, partly the answer is that there's been a bunch of stuff happening, but also just because it's a really big thing to do. And what I mean is that
just remove the locks.
I'm saying there are small things, but I just mean in the general sense for why, because from my point of view is I want it to be that the game is really like, if you're going to have a loot system, make it a good loot system, and if you want to make it a good loot system, then you need to have thought about it quite hard, or you end up with what we have.
Or just remove the locks, so we no longer really have a loot system, and it's just like a little bit of time investment.
Sure, yeah. That has been the universal feedback. Like
maybe the fucking technical left-footed clone that is literally built to be input intensive, to be complex, should not have a tacked-on gear system on top of it. For fucking, how long has it been since fucking V1 came out, dude? How long has it been? Like 8 years? For 8 years. For 8 fucking years. The same goddamn thing over and over again has been said, dude. The difference is, V1, you could cheat items. V2, modded realm. Darktide, now you're being taken hostage.
Oh yeah, like, so this is also, so I know what you mean, but let me put it this way.
Yeah.
When you look at the blessings at the moment, there are some weapons where some of the blessings work the way you would want if you were going to do this. And an example would be Brutal Momentum. I'm not saying it's balanced, but like...
Or Power Cycler.
That... Power Cycler? Well, Power Cycler activation ones. But like, I would certainly say on the Crusher specifically, the way Skull Crusher interacts with it can be cool. The way that the trauma... If there were more blessings on the Crusher, I think you could have some interesting decisions to make there. I think some guns have Deadly Accurate, actually, is a good example of a stat blessing. If if crit was less degenerate. But the reason why I like Deadly Accurate is just like, what Deadly Accurate says is it takes something that previously was a non-aim intensive random effect, which is crit, and says, if you do this while aiming, you get more of a reward. So it takes a dumb mechanic and makes it smarter. I like that. And I actually, I've had a long feedback post about perks, but one of the things that I want is I want them to add a crit weak spot perk.
I don't want them to do anything with the perk system other than fucking throw it away. Having to stack like damage increases on fucking weapons is ridiculously unengaging, man. Like, remove perks, give me a third blessing slot, balance blessings, make weapons operate at the level they should. Don't let me min-max the numbers on my fucking weapon by gambling correctly. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. It's dumb.
Well, to be fair, I think to me,
I hate it.
But I don't like perks. But you could take the system as it currently is, change not that much about it, and have the system work way better.
Removing locks.
But to take an example would be, not only removing locks, but you know how there's like 10% weak spot damage?
Yeah.
Imagine if the weak spot perk was 10% base weak spot finesse. So what it would do is it would take the weapon, and it would take it from 1.1 to 1.2. And the reason why this is actually way better than the weak spot thing is it's like, if you've got a weapon with shit weak spot, right, 10% weak spot does nothing. You get 10% to 10%. You get 1%.
But the finesse thing is a significant increase.
Exactly. And it says, okay, you get 10% more damage, at least, when you hit a weak spot, and other things that affect finesse are now more effective. It's actually way more interesting, even if it's still not the best, and even if it's still like, why am I having to put base stats here? That is at least more, and this is what I really wanted for the marksman tree too, is I wanted there to be a weapon base finesse bonus in there, so that you could take weapons. Yeah, I know, K-Kids, it's not a 10%, but I know. But like, roughly, it's just, it's closer to 10% than it is often. But the point about it is just like, for example, with the bolter, what I really wanted was for there to be a node in here where it would allow you to be more accurate with stuff like braced auto guns or bolters and have a base finesse increase so you could use them as marksman weapons. Stamina is an example, right? Stamina on weapons is, there are a couple of other things. There are some perks I can think of that would be interesting. I actually think a small percentage stamina on kill perk would be sick.
That would be wild, dude. That takes down every melee weapon.
Yeah, right? But the thing is, think about that.
Oh, no, never mind. It's competing with 25% damage. Never mind, I'd never take it. Oopsie, I forgot what perks were for a moment.
It's almost like there's a specific category of perk that's really problematic. Is it the 25% global multiplicative damage that inexplicably boosts the damage of everything else you do while you're holding the weapon like a magic fucking stick?
I'm not sure.
If that is the problematic that seems weird, doesn't it?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I wonder if those are a good idea. I think we should probably not have the global 25% global damage modifiers that work like a stick while you're holding the weapon that includes quick swapping weapons for completely incomprehensible reasons. I don't know, small changes. Like that to me is the biggest mistake, is the multiplicative damage versus armor type ones. Because the other thing is,
this was a problem in Vermintide too.
But you can also take those ones and you could turn that into, even if you wanted it to be an armor type specific damage boost, how about this? Imagine it was 25% rending on weak spot hits on flak. Now, that sounds really specific, but let's imagine you are someone who is using a lasgun.
You can now deal with flak, and you're rewarded for using your marksman weapon like a marksman weapon. Fantastic.
Exactly. It encourages good behavior, it deals with a weakness, but you don't have to take it, right? Maybe you have enough, like maybe you take Deadly Accurate, so you don't need to take this and it hits some breakpoints or whatever. But the point is just that there are so many ways to take even the systems that they currently have that are kind of baseline probably not that great, but to make it so that it's a lot more interesting. And for me, like, what I would want to do with perks is make it so that perks are more like base weapon modifiers rather than the same stats that you can get elsewhere on the tree. Because it's like the issue with stamina, right? You're never going to swap the opportunity cost of stamina on a weapon for the stamina on a curio. If you want 3 stamina, you take a curio. You're never going to take a weapon and swap one of those incredibly valuable bonuses. So yeah, like base stamina, don't put it on a weapon. But like, have it so that something about the way the weapon behaves.
Interactions, just like stamina interactions, be put there on the weapon.
Exactly.
Then.
Yeah. And again, it's like there are so many things where I certainly think there are lots of decisions that they've made that put them in a difficult position. Well, I mean, Rafa, the other thing you could do, and this is a lot of the difficult and problematic rending in the game is that it's global. there are tons of stuff where it's like weak spot rending is a much better stat than percentage rending. Like if you were to just take a step back and say for every single bit of rending that you see in the vet tree, if it was changed to 10% rending on weak spot hit, you've instantly solved a bunch of the problems with that stat baseline. Because the first thing is that like you instantly get rid of the problem of it affecting dots and stuff, even if you code it incompetently because they never weak spot hit. But the second thing is, again, you're changing the reward for playing well for the player, and it makes more sense. Like, oh, well, you know, his head is not as armored and stuff.
Shooting the islets, stabbing the islets.
Yeah, you can make more sense. And so I think that's what I would want to do with a lot of this stuff.
I think that's like the idea, like when they were like at the drawing board, was for Uncanny Strike, and it just ended up where we're at right now, which is just
Oh, well, but exactly. The thing about Uncanny is like the other problem with Uncanny stuff, but it's like it's 100%, 120 now, but like, it's just like no, just no. Like, if you replaced Uncanny with just 25% rending on weak spot hit,
it would still like be... It would now perform like what you want. Like, you walk up to the Crusher and you fucking stab him in the islets, but...
Exactly.
You'd just be killing that Crusher, not as ridiculously fast as right now, and you wouldn't be you wouldn't be doing this as Psyker. No, not that one, this one.
Start the fire.
Same thing with Bleed, dude. Like, starting the Great Fire as Psyker is like the dumbest fucking meme imaginable, bro. Like, you just trauma like a massive ball of elites, and then you just go in there with a knife, and they all just fucking light up. It's so stupid, man. That needs to not be in my game. And then you press F, and then you press the funny F, and you go over the Kappa Soul Blaze, and they're all dead.
Yeah, like, that's the other thing, too, is like, there are some mechanics where, because it matters so much for how they work, like behind the scenes, like with Soul Blaze especially, if you don't know how Soul Blaze works, your ability to play with the mechanic is so much lower than someone who knows how all the stacks work. Like, that is... Because the problem, too, is that it's like, not only does Darktide not emphasize its gameplay, when there even is gameplay like that, and I'm not saying that it's perfect, but at least it's something you can think about while you're playing, like it changes your decision-making, there's no way for someone who's just playing the game to know that this exists. Like, you're just ordinary John Psyker. How do you know about these stack interactions?
You've installed the debuff indicator mod, and you have noticed the number going up.
Yeah, exactly. And that's and the other thing too is like the way that you make debuffs interesting. And so this is again a concept from a different category of game broadly, but I don't know how much it gets. But basically, there are two different kinds of context in a game like this that you can have. You can have context. I want to be my context is it's like I have a bunch of actions I can take, and this action should be different depending on what the situation is. And a combo you can think of as basically being like, if I press left click, it's different if I press left click before. I've changed my player side context. And then on enemy side, you have stuff like if I hit you while you're bleeding, that's enemy side context, or stagger state, stuff like that, right? And this basically allows you, parameterizes your decisions through time. And
the fact that, I mean, even just from like a development perspective, that they haven't implemented something like that just for themselves to avoid the, like, for retard protection from the retard thing. It's just it seems like so elemental that you have something like that differentiates, okay, like the origin of things, like the parameter of things, as you said, because we have so much extremely dumb stuff in the game right now due to where the buff should come from and what it affects, that it's just it's crazy.
But the thing is, there's quite a few of those where you don't need to even change tooltips. You can do it with a visual indicator. So for example, if you made it so that perilous combustion was a different color, like it was blue instead of turquoise, you'd be able to see both of the stacks on the enemy at the same time. And that's an example of where, like, okay, that doesn't necessarily, but it does clue you into the fact it's a different kind of thing. You know, it's still fire, but it's a different kind of fire, and they happen at the same time. Yeah. That would be like one way you could do, and this is what I think about the brittleness as well. Like brittleness, if you change it to the version that you want and the version I want, which is where it's like specific to the armor plate and there's all this queuing, that makes so much more sense. Because if you just say to someone, "Oh, I'm just breaking the armor on that," yeah, exactly. Does it? I mean, I don't think that's an ideal solution to perilous combustion, because actually, well, sorry, not perilous combustion, but perilous combustion and what's it called these days? Venting shriek.
Yeah.
Is it venting shriek?
Creeping flames. Creeping flames.
Yes, there you go. I basically just want, because but there's just lots of different ways where one of the reasons that this game is cool is like, so when the shovels, we were testing the shovels, the new shovels, like one of the shovels had the wrong impact parameters just because it had literally just been made and they hadn't done the impact numbers on it yet. And when you hit the enemies, they reacted like all weirdly. They would go in the wrong direction or they wouldn't stagger at all and stuff.
Oh, you mean like Deimos Heavy 2 on headshots that still isn't fixed?
Yeah. Although, but instead of it being like a really big reaction, it was just it's like it's surprising how much of that stuff, which sounds super minor, like enemies react like they should do when you hit them, but it's like there's so much of this where if you make the mechanic intuitive enough where you don't have to think about the weird details of the engine, then it's like you can get people to kind of do it the right way without having to really dive into the details. And people will, and there will still be benefit to doing it, but it shouldn't be the case that it needs someone to show you a video of the on-repeated hit property of Onslaught working with bleed critics.
Yeah. For sure.
Well, the Mark V dueling sword is in an interesting position. The dueling swords still... I wanted more stuff to happen with the dueling swords. I wanted it to be the other dueling swords didn't get the cleave buff that the Mark II got. And I wanted the Mark II lights to have a better animation because the Mark II lights come from really low down. And so you have to reshard the hitbox to hit heads, whereas the Mark 4 has much better hitboxes on its lights. So the Horde Clear one is less good feeling, even though, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
there's a couple of things.
It has a bit munty animations. Like, I totally see what you mean. Like, I like the DS2 is my beloved, and it is like really weird.
Yeah, no, and I like at least though the Vanguard now hits more than 2 hit mass. We did it.
Amazing.
People.
Yeah, amazing.
It's 5 or something.
Fixed. Now maybe we can make light heavy like chain into itself. That would be
yeah.
Nice.
I mean, and also, but also like, you know, when I wait, I can't remember. Did the dueling sword stagger? Is it better behaved now? I can't remember.
No, it's stupid. I think it's stupid still.
Is
what was it that you wanted?
I wanted it so that if you're fighting an AI active crusher who's doing an overhead, a heavy stab cancelled into the special will stagger him, but not the special by itself.
Oh no, that is how it is, but I don't think it's like. Is it a headshot? Oh, you did. Oh, you did. It did get done.
There we go. Okay, good. Because that was.
Oh
that was
no!
like basically...
I just did it. Did I critted? What? What is this? On crit, he just gets knocked out of it.
On crit, it might still work.
Yeah.
You know, it
No,
should
he's
if
behaved.
it's.
Wait,
Yeah.
no, that wasn't crit. He got. Did I just go sit and say?
But at least it's not what it was, where it was like you body shot them and it would have went stagger. It's still probably too high, but like, you know, there's a lot, because this is the other thing too, is that there's so much tuning. Like, I'm really worried about the blessing rework. Yeah, it's for the overhead. The walking overhead has the stagger prevention, so you know, with his other stuff like that, yeah, it'll always stagger him. He only has stagger resistance on the overheads, but the like the crusher at the moment. There we go. But yeah, it's still probably too high, but it's better than nothing. Because it was deranged. But
see, I'm constantly replicating a ghost hit in Titanium. I feel like I'm going schizo. I hit him while dodging. It shows a visual indicator, but there's no damage going out. That's weird.
Which one is this?
The During Sword 2. I'm getting ghosted in Titanium. Hold on, let me pull up the clip.
Well, if you're staggering, is it the same ghost hit?
You can stagger with ghosts, by the way, at least on server. Hold on, I'm pulling up the clip right now. I've done it a couple of times in a row now.
What I mean is it when you're getting hit?
No.
A different
is it like the ghost parry thing?
Well, that's what I'm wondering. It's just like if it's...
Well, no, I don't think so. Hold on. When was this? I don't remember when it was. I've done it a bunch of times. Okay, that's me getting clapped like a retard in front of everyone.
Oh no.
Am I just utterly unhinged? Like,
well, I mean, it should have the same ghost hit properties every other weapon, right? Which is if you're in a stagger under some conditions.
There you fucking go, dude. That like body shot attack did fucking nothing. Look at that. It's just the special connects and does nothing. Like, look, I do like special. Then it's heavy.
So we got hit,
and then like the third attack.
Yeah,
it gives me a stack.
That means it hit. This is a UI issue. Yeah, that's a UI
weird.
issue. Okay,
that's weird.
That's a hit marker issue,
yeah.
And I think that's just but yeah, because with a ghost hit, it wouldn't even give you the stack, right?
Yeah. Although,
but,
dude, have you noticed that in game, if you get a ghost hit, sometimes they get staggered. Like you deal no damage, but they get the stagger. What the fuck is that?
That probably means that's a disagreement between your client and the server, and it's probably the case that you did hit them, and your client is wrong. So what happens is your client has incorrectly predicted that you didn't hit them. The server says, actually, bro, you did hit. The enemies
don't
now
take
in
damage.
animation. But exactly, because it's like, you know, your client is 50 milliseconds past the point where it would have shown the hit marker, and it doesn't like catch up. It just goes, fuck it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the ghost hit thing. You see that is definitely that is reported, and it's slated for a big So that video that Thingy made with the Power Sword 6 with my voice in it, the illegal content farm. A friend of my brother.
What thing?
That video, the Power Sword 6 video that like Indie Pride did, where I'm talking.
Yeah.
A friend of my brother's was on mushrooms, and he'd been watching like a 40k something, and it auto played that video, and he started hearing my voice, and he thought he was going mad. And he literally was like, "Am I going mad?"
Dude, I could talk about this shit like all day. Like it's always so nice having you there, Crab, man. Like,
I'm just happy to listen.
No, I basically
you're jerking off, dude. You're slow stroking it, man. My man is out here like pumping this thing.
I just been listening all this time.
Yeah, I took a big break from Darktide just because I have this thing where it's like, because the thing is, I felt like if I kept playing, I was going to get bored of the game in a way where I wasn't going to be around enough to really contribute. Because the thing is basically, you know, sometimes you're just like, I could keep playing this game, it's not the worst, but I'm not feeling motivated to do it. And I always feel like that's a really good spot where if you can, to take a break. Because then I can start again and be fresh for the next round of testing cycle.
And yeah, and to it's not just not playing the game, like it's actually being like a thank you for your server, by the way, like actually being committed to like act on feedback and like propose things and they take a much more active part than just playing the game.
Well, but that's the thing, is it's just like sometimes it isn't even if I wasn't actively playing, so long as I'm still able to talk on the test server, I'll still pass stuff on, because it's just like, you know, it's really difficult to get, you know, they're so defensive. It's so difficult to get stuff in front of them. So and also like loads of times I've just been able to report a bug, like, you know, the thing with the shotgun. I didn't know that. If you asked me, I would have probably said I imagine it behaves like that, but that's the same as saying I didn't know about it, but I can imagine it's true. But like, you know, I reported that and I got to use it. It's stuff like that. It's useful.
Anyway, dude, it's fucking 11 p.m. Like, is there like one last big thing you wanted to get in, or was it just like literally spitballing for 3 hours?
Well, I mean, basically, I just felt like I haven't been around. Partly it's also because I've been in the countryside looking after my mother who's been a bit sick. But I was just like saying hello, but also just like let's see what happens. I imagine there will be news fairly soon. I don't not that I'm saying anything, but I imagine they're going to start getting into, because like, you know how they're going to be.
I would imagine the Christmas vacation has got to fucking end before February starts. You know, joking aside.
I mean, look, sometime in May, I think, is the predictive. But
that's like literally the joke I made earlier, dude. Like the fucking Swedish Christmas fucking ends in July or some shit.
But yeah, let's see what happens. I'm hoping that there's going to be, because the other thing too is that a lot of the last year was cool, but it is the case where the amount of content in this, you know what I mean? It's like some new models is nice, but it's not quite new guns, and there haven't been new enemies, and apart from the Chaos Spawn, and there've been a few new maps and a little bit of stuff, but it's like
they're bad, and they need to be reworked, which is why I wrote a document about maps, Crab.
I basically think that maps should be smaller, and you should just be locked in a small closet with 4 spawn doors at north, south, east, and west. And it's one
player per spawn door, but there's an objective in the middle, and someone has to go do it. And it opens the floodgates.
and you have to protect an NPC while a horde of gunners shoot them.
That's fantastic.
But I mean, I'm hoping because like you know how I feel like a lot of games like this, it's like the first expansion is always really good, and I'm hoping that there's going to be a first like Destiny 2 had the Taken
You mean
King and-
Excise Vault and Complex with the first iteration of the Crusher? That's the first expansion, dude.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm down with devs having holidays. I don't mind that too much. It's more just I want to. Because I think part of the thing is it's just I think people want to know what's happening, like what's the plan.
I bully the Swedes a lot. I don't have any problem with them taking vacation time. I think the frustrating part is how little seems to be getting done when there isn't vacation time. It's to the point that it can be.
I think they did a really great rebalance of all the gun ammo totals. I think that was great. That must have taken a lot of time.
Yeah,
with the straight
about 8 months. About 8 months worth of calculating and determining the correct ammo.
Yeah.
Or totally 8 months. Totally 8 months worth of work.
Exactly.
And that's been like a pattern with them, which is very frustrating. And it's compounded by the fact that they just don't fucking talk to us. Like they don't tell us anything ever. And it's horrible because when they do tell us, like I think one of the best things and the things that was reviewed the most well by the community was when they had this massive patch. Aside from copy pasting the double class section like 3 times in a row, giving me early onset schizophrenia, people like detailed change lists.
Yes.
And they like when there's a reasoning. They really like. I go back to the Big Balance beta a lot back in V2. What people liked is that there was a reasoning for the change or for not implementing a certain change. And even if it's wrong, even if the change is bad, it is always good to know where it came from. And it's also helpful to then give feedback about it later. It's genuinely positive.
I'll show you a document about that. But yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing too. Is like, I think they feel like a lot of their communications have been met negatively because community sentiment was negative, and it's just like if you have a bunch of angry people, it doesn't matter what you say, they're going to just be like, well, you haven't done this other thing, right?
But I mean, that's also like it's just like I'm sorry, but it's demonstrably like the tide has turned. The game hasn't, in my mind, improved significantly enough to receive the flip in reviews that it got. It's sitting at 83% positives. We don't have map selection. We still have Lux. Servers have never been this fucked except for like literally like the first week of the beta, and the public opinion has completely turned. I don't know where they're getting the sentiment from. It's crazy. Like
but I think
everybody's like nicer to them now.
Yeah, but I think it's just like. It's like once they've decided that they want to just do things. Because I think the other thing too is that sentiment changed with them mostly not communicating that much. And so I think, and I can kind of understand it where they're just like, well, we're just not going to promise stuff and we're just going to try and make good changes and that should be good enough. And in one sense, yes, but it's frustrating because it's
also, it shouldn't be about promising. It should be about explaining and talking and shit like that. And
So this thing, like to me, it's just like I would draw a comparison with Warframe. Like, I don't think if you ask Warframe players, would they want the devs to stop doing dev streams? No, I would say yes. And I think that's kind of the thing is that sometimes it's the case where it's like your communications are being met with negativity, and it's not because the act of communicating is bad. It's because other stuff is bad, and that's what's getting fed back to you.
Or because what you communicated is bad. And I'll point anyone to the Vermintide 2 reveal streams of stuff like the Outcast Engineer, where they show like shitty, choppy 1 minute recruit gameplay of the class, and everyone has questions. Can we see the talent tree? Hold on, let me ask. We're not allowed to talk about that. How does the minigun work? We're not allowed to talk about that. How does the cockhammer work? We're not allowed to talk about that. All right. Class is coming out in a week. What? Of course people are going to respond negatively. Are you kidding me, dude?
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is just like I've kind of wanted this, but it's like hard to do. But I am just like, when I see the trailer gameplay, sometimes I'm just like, could you just let me record some clips and you can use those?
So true.
Like, I have a clip of me sliding under a dog and like hitting it in midair with the thunder hammer, and I'm just like, this is the kind of stuff you should be in the trailer.
We laugh about the Twitter like sedition clips they post of a dude like shooting 3 poxies with a bolter and then like power sorting like one guy.
Yeah, like and it's like the other thing too is it's just like when you can make a trailer that is a shout out to experienced and new players, because sliding under a dog and slamming it in midair with a thunder hammer looks sick no matter who you are. But if you're a player who's experienced and you're like, wait, you can slide under a fucking dog now? You know what I mean? Like it's you can really make it so that you don't have to, because I think the other thing they're afraid of is that like high level gameplay looks too twitchy. But there's tons of stuff where it's like that's not the case at all. You know, for lots of stuff just looks cool. Someone doing a series of chain parries looks sick. Like, you know, you can meet the desire to be cinematic without it being someone going into stealth and emptying 3 shots of a lasgun over the head of a flamer.
Yeah.
that and oh man, maybe next time what I'll do is I'll just record some like high quality, because the other problem is you have to record it with no HUD, but like record some high quality no HUD clips and just try and upload it to them and just be like, you could use this. No.
Show them my gameplay when I tried to take a thumbnail, dude.
Yeah, no, but exactly, and I think that there is a, because
I'm joking because I always pick the most boring shit possible, because I'm like, I have the cognitive awareness to remember to take the thumbnail so nothing is happening.
Whenever I see that in the video, I'm always like, what is he doing? And then a second later, I'm like, oh yeah, thumbnail.
Yeah, I was sailing, like, spamming a sail into boxies while taking a step back. It's like, what's he doing? Oh, just, it looks cool. It makes blue flashes. Shooting the last pistol at a poxwalker? You betcha, that's, it's for the thumbnail.
Yeah, I still want them to add, like, there's also so many things they can do where they could steer players towards like sensible gameplay in a funny way. Stuff like if you dump a whole mag into a bunch of poxwalkers, the other guys criticize you for it, and then your guy goes, "I'm not wasting ammo, I'm wasting poxwalkers," or whatever.
I love that.
Just shit like that. But anyway, I think the other issue with communication too, and this is about promises, is it very often feels like devs feel like they say something that is just something they want to do, or they're a little bit careless in their language, and then people interpret it with
this is coming,
as if it's coming. And to be fair, I can see that as an issue, but it comes back to, if you are constantly communicating, that's much less of an issue, because you can communicate more clearly what is actually going. And I think a good example of this is if anyone's been following the Path of Exile 2 development, like the developers have had like multiple hour-long interviews with just random community people to explain different things, and they've been very open about a lot of stuff. And I think that people have still misunderstood a bunch of stuff, but like, you know, people. The other thing too is it does feel like there are always going to be people who are going to want to misunderstand stuff. Some people are just, and some people are just mad.
And like what you said about like the constant communication, like I remember when Deep Rock Galactic were saying, oh, we're working on these 2 new biomes. One is like the caustic mire, and the other one is like this like underwater looking fluorescent type. I was kind of excited. It's like, oh, it looks like the surface of Venus. It's kind of cool. And then they came out and they said, turns out the caustic mire is not coming out. We've tried, and it just didn't work. We've changed the biome. It's something else. People didn't fucking throw a massive fit. People are fine. It's like if you're open and honest, like people are fine with stuff like getting changed around or you know, even not coming out at all. If you just say, you know, we're looking into doing something like this, like it already shows like intent to do something and understanding that that thing maybe needs to be done. And I always use this example. Early on in V2, it is the only time during Vermintide 2's entire lifespan that Fat Shark was communicating, was like the first couple of months, and then they were just like loner lore posts that said nothing. They said something about Sienna having an identity crisis, and something like the greatsword or like the hammer and shield like needing like a better push attack to deal with some things, whatever. It was like one of the first patches they did. I don't remember. It's been so long. And to me, talking so openly about something that is so core to the game and that is such like a core problem of like an entire character, and being open about it, was a fantastic bit of communication. It's like they're willing to like understand their vulnerability and like expose it to the player base, and I thought that was wonderful. And it showed, because sometimes you have this fear where you're like, do these people understand their own fucking game? And sometimes they make decisions to make you go, of course not. And sometimes they say stuff and you think, oh yeah, they're not that dumb.
Yeah,
and,
well,
you know.
but I think also sometimes it's just that what seems really obvious to a player is not necessarily obvious to a dev, simply because one of those two people, it just isn't. And
I mean, fair, because no developer of Darktide has played the game for 2,300 hours. And that's just always going to be the case. Like, it's not a dig at developers. Like, there's no, I want to say there is no way for the guy sitting behind the desk coding to actually properly understand how what he's currently doing is going to look in-game.
Oh,
ever.
Yeah. And the flip side of that too is like, the communities have a very short memory for how wrong their consensus is. You know, I always think of Rending on the Rumbler when Rending reduced its damage. Like everyone was like, you have to take Shattering Impact on the Rumbler, and it didn't work. But I think the big thing about Darktide is, for a game that's complicated, and for a game that is this much about like high-level play, because fundamentally, if you make a game that's complicated and this mechanically intense, that's awesome. But you have to accept that you need feedback from people who are at the outer edge of that experience.
Yes. Trickle down balance, baby.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too, and this is what's something that I've definitely noticed is it's very, very difficult. What you really need is you just need like one central guy who has a really strong sense of taste, who is willing to go out in public and just fight for unpopular changes, because where
That's
it's
me,
like,
dude. I'll
where
do
people
it.
basically just because it's like, you know, if you want to make the game harder, right, that will be an unpopular step. Like one of the things I think I would really like to test is just what would the game be like if players just did 25% less damage. Just straightforwardly, just.
I mean, I'd love to be able to even test like extreme stuff like that. Like all the map
Yeah.
changes I proposed, I just don't want them to be put in the game immediately. I want to test them. Like I'd love to experiment. How is the game played when there's no suppression? How is the game played when there's no stuns? How is the game played when you get rid of rending entirely? I'd love to try these things out.
Well, but that's also like for stuff like map and spawn changes. That's why I really think a public test environment that is just run for like a weekend, and they just say this weekend we're testing this thing. If you play on the public test environment, and you give us a feedback, you know, just like at the end you just fill in a short 2-minute survey, and
You
if
get a
do
hat.
that, yeah, exactly, you get a hat, and all the resources that you earn on the test environment go to your main.
Crab has
and
to get
then-
me into a tester job. I'd take it. I'll be honest. I'd take it. I'd be alright at it.
No, I mean, no, and I think this is the other thing too. Is like, that kind of thing is because to me, you can't have a small NDA private playtest that is meaningfully able to put the number of bodies through the systems, complex systems that a game like this needs.
It's a necessary step, and it's a good step, and it does do the thing where like you kind of have these more elite players. Like it's my understanding is that people in test are like people like mostly people like you and Tier who are like both very good at the game and have like a very deep understanding of it.
mean,
But then you
that's-
also need the buddies. Like you need people to break stuff.
Oh yeah, no, there's I mean, you know, Grimm's on there, JSAT's on there, you know,
Yeah.
like they are good players, but the problem is that one, good players are actually blind to lots of things. So, you know, for example, my view on the bolter is probably like the way I want the bolter to be balanced is probably not the way that most people would be happy, and that's actually a reflection of the different way that I view and play the game. And it's like you can't just have a team of people who have the same taste as me, or you end up with a game that's
Yes.
for me and no one else. But the second thing is just like the way that like this game is meant to be fun for players, and not all players are 1,500-hour nerds. Lots of players are just guys who want to have a good time. And
And play 1 hour a day. But like when you're at that level, I feel like it doesn't matter what changes the like high level dudes do, because if we make the game too hard or we make the game too like unbalanced and we get rid of the thing you really liked, if you just play on like lower difficulties, like how is that really gonna matter, you know?
well,
Like,
but this is the other
frankly-
thing too. It's like imagine if the difference in resources between the difficulties was way smaller.
There shouldn't be one. There straightforwardly shouldn't be a
Yeah.
difference at all. I remember people complaining that like Cataclysm and V2 didn't give you better chests than fucking Legend. And it's like, dude, fuck off. Like it's
It's a
healthy
it's
for
a
the game
challenge.
to not incentivize playing the highest difficulties for loot.
Yes. No, this is, and so there's like a quite common sentiment I think at the moment where people are basically like, there's the balance in the game is really bad in the sense that players are way too powerful relative to the enemies. But the thing is, there's actually like, you could almost look at the balance in a game like this as there's three different kinds of balance that you want to have right. And the first kind of balance is the relationship between like how difficult something is and how fair it is. Like this sort of sense where it's like the enemies are threatening, but they're threatening in a fair way. Whatever level of threat they pose, they're not doing too much bullshit. That is improved. The second thing is balance internally between your different options. Those are a lot better, not perfect, but it's definitely the case where like there are way more options in terms of weapons that you can choose from. That is improved. But balance between players and the enemies has definitely got a lot more distorted. And a lot of and there are certainly, I think some of the testers feel like basically the game's become way too easy and you know, and it's been kind of fucked up. I'm just like, actually, it's much easier to fix the overall global relationship of power between players and enemies if the individual parts of those kits are functioning internally. So you can do like global adjustments and it doesn't break things. Because if it was the case that internal balance was really bad and everyone was running bolter, right? Let's imagine the bolter was 10 times better than every other weapon. You can't balance the entirety of player power because really you're just balancing the bolter. And so I think that I am optimistic. I might be wrong, but I'm optimistic that most of the changes that happen to the overall game balance between players and enemies will be in a much better direction than they have been.
That's nice to hear. I'm
No, I mean, as no, there should be. I think there should be some reward, but what I mean is just simply that certainly for a thing like this, one of the difficulties you end up with is people basically end up being convinced that the max difficulty, max whatever, is the only way to play the game. And so what you end up with is...
You go into a pub and you have people who are clearly not ready, who are clearly not comfortable playing at this level of difficulty. They go down every 10 seconds. I think like there should be like some kind of incentive. My issue stems from the fact that we even have this fucking crafting system to begin with, and I think the rewards for playing well and playing the high difficulty should be like cool cosmetics you can show off because you're a cool guy who beat the cool difficulties and you're epic. And when it comes to gear, like generally like it should be fucking minimal. You should never give people an extrinsic motivator for playing the higher difficulties that is the main motivator ever. Remove rewards you from the best it can come for everyone. Yes, drip fin me plasteel for just existing. I agree.
No, but I mean, unironically, a big chunk of the issue too is like, I think if people would be much more willing to accept a very high failure rate in games if you lost less. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
And I think it's particularly the case for but yeah, the high difficulty should be prestige difficulty. I don't think it's
yeah. Totally.
And also, frankly, it should be the case that if you're someone who is really new to the game, you shouldn't be basically feel like you're getting funneled into damnation all the time. If you're someone who's just fairly casual, it should be all right to play on lower difficulty.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, Crab, is there like one last thing you can say, because I'm gonna... It's late.
All right.
Is there like one last thought?
One last thing. Fuck, actually, it's a good question. Actually, here's the other thing. I feel like the most difficult thing at the moment is I really do feel like something is weird with the netcode that broke somewhere between patch 13 and 15. And there is one specific thing that
I think
broke,
it's even patch 13 and 14. It's like earlier.
Yeah, no, it's somewhere in there. Yeah, no,
absolutely, absolutely.
And that to me is like, because whenever I played like a game with a friend, like one round like a week ago, and I was on a 30 to 40 ping game, and I was having micro rollback on every single attack animation, and that is wrong. It's just not how it should behave. And that is the thing I would really want to fix, because a game like this rides or dies on how it feels to interact with it.
Yeah.
So let's pray.
And all of that effort and all of that genuinely great game design that has gone into making the enemies feel right, like getting the right animations, getting your movement to work, getting the dog to behave properly. All of that fucking crumbles when the network just breaks, and it's unfortunate that it breaks so much. No, I followed Witchfire for years, and then it came out and it was a roguelite, so I just dropped it.
Okay, so the fascinating thing about Witchfire to me is I tried it because a friend was just like, you should have a look at it, because, you know, the developers, the guys did Painkiller and like Painkiller. And it's just fascinating. It has literally the same controls as Darktide, except you can't dodge slide a bunch of other stuff. And the more I played, the more I was just like, you forget when you play, until you play another game, just how much of the small details of the controls in this game.
There's a lot that we take for granted because it's just like so core to it. Yeah,
and I was
totally.
like, wait, the slide in this is a fixed distance? I can't cancel the recovery into this? This is clunky. When I do this, I have to eat the recovery of the melee animation, and I can't chain this. There hasn't been any chain timing here. You can't dodge slide. Like, all these things, like...
No, I think it's funny. It was like a JSAT. I'm a huge JSAT fan. I liked the videos. I've loved JSAT. I love the videos. Like, my favorite things are like the Trusos in EV1 that were commented, because like when he talks, you learn stuff. And he said something about like people underestimate like how hard it is to make like a good control scheme, and the more time goes by and the more I play this game, and the more it's like, hell yeah, dude, like that's why it's so frustrating. Like, people want Darktide to be good because Darktide fundamentally feels so good to play, and like if this game was functional, you know, it would be extremely fun. And when it functions, it is extremely fun.
Have you seen JSAT's control setup?
I've seen the foot pedal and like the key left-hand keyboard thing. It's so funny, dude. I love it. It's my favorite meme of all time.
Dude, it was great.
The JSAT foot pedal.
I was talking to him about this, and he was just like, I really think you should get pedals.
You're getting groomed.
Full-on combat.
I love... Two memes I fucking love from Darktide is JSAT's setup with like the foot pedal and the demonic left-handed thing he's got going on, and Commissar Tier's picture of the space he has for his mouse. Those two, they're like burned into my mind.
Have I ever told you what my control setup is at the moment in Darktide?
Oh, I know. Last time I looked at it, I wanted to vomit, and you said you had to change it because of the stuff that came with patch like 13.
Yeah. Spacebar ADS.
No, stop.
Spacebar ADS.
I said no.
Spacebar ADS. Right-click dodge. Control jump.
Holy shit, Cake, you got that on tap, dude. That's such a good fast
Oh,
stuff.
powerful. Dude, I have been, I like, after a while, the other thing too is, it's like, but the thing is that I love that Darktide has enough different inputs that I want to press at different times that I would even consider doing something
No,
like that.
you're disgusting.
Look,
You're
it's-
disgusting. You're not considering it because it has enough inputs. You're considering because you're like the foulest, the genuinely the perfidious Albion made manifest, dude. I can feel the crooked British smile widen as
dude,
you
I just
describe
don't-
what you've done to your keyboard.
The really sad thing is like, I just hate that there was, you know, the game released no toggle ADS, and I always play
Yeah.
with toggle ADS because I hate holding like the pressure on the mouse.
Yeah, no, I
And so
get
I
that.
changed it purely because of that, and then I got stuck with it, and now it's just like it feels wrong because it's like your block input. There's so much stuff. Oh.
All right, Daniel Gamer, dude. It's been a pleasure as always, man.
Yes. And I'll be around more, and also just in general, basically, if any of you spot random bugs and stuff, DM it to me on Discord or just like at me in Teleport's Discord or whatever. If any of you find like actual bugs and stuff like that, pass it on to me and I will pass it on so long as I can repro it, preferably with a repro, because it's just a really
Clipping
easy way
every silent poxburster and like personally emailing it to you.
well, you know, I mean,
Every
it's-
single one.
Yeah, for especially if you think it's a more niche one.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Oh
basically,
yeah.
I've
No, that's why I
we-
make sure to keep an eye out and I mention it when I'm like, oh, attacks heavy ones have like a weird input problem. Let's tell Crab about it. Because usually, I'm like retarded, but when it comes to inputs not working, I have a pretty good fucking instinct for it. I called the Crusher pretty spot on. The weird ADS shit. It's like, yep, something's wrong here. The attacks one, like, yep, we spotted that pretty fast.
I do technically have a YouTube. I was a YouTube partner in like 2011. Because I
He's an
made a
OG.
Let's Play, and then I stopped posting videos for 10 years. And now I'm not a YouTube partner anymore.
It's over.
I-
You YouTube divorcee.
It technically exists. I have a Bayonet. In fact, I'll just link my. Bayonetta.
Crab has a very good YouTube video about Bayonetta where he explains like why to play the game you have to make the game interesting for yourself, and it's a fantastic philosophy to have, and everyone
You
should have it. So remove plasteel.
Yeah. You can find my channel there, and you can also hear my
Yeah.
amazing all my. But yeah. And yeah, and I think maybe we can convince the Swedish fish to keep moving in a good direction and not let this game die, because it's been brought back from the brink, but it's still, you know, it's still a bit
It's
sick.
they've
It
they've
needs
been
nursing.
they've been granted a second chance most failed games would kill for. And yeah.
Right.
Crab, if you
Anyway, I will leave before I trap you for another 7 hours, so I'm
you-
gonna leave first. Just
you have
Good
you
luck.
have the map document anyway that I sent you. I would
I
really
have the
appreciate
second map document indeed.
the second one. Yeah, it's it's like the document take two or something stupid.
Yeah.
Read through it. I think you have
No,
it right.
I've read through it, and what we need to do is we need to talk it through at some point. Basically, if you have stuff like this, we can just go through it and prepare documents I can then pass on.
Yeah, because it's good to iterate and like bounce ideas, because there's stuff, even stuff that I write in there, and then I think about it, and I'm like, is it really a good idea to have gunners set up there?
Oh no, but this is also the kind of feedback that I'm much less good at, because I haven't actually been playing the game in a group that much in the last 6 months.
Oh yeah.
Because so much of like I've had 500 hours, probably nearly 1,000 hours of game time on test, where I'm almost entirely playing by myself, which is funny in one sense, but it also means that it is quite funny when you see like a couple of people were like, I think these playtesters are all just really bad, and I'm just like, yes, they should probably talk to the people. They should talk to Grim and just be like,
Yeah.
the problem is that like the players there weren't good enough to speedrun. It's just like, no, Grim broke it like 5 times actually, and this is like the version that was fixed 5 times, and it's still like breakable. You know?
Yes. No, like map stuff, dude, I'm like autistic about it. Like I can name
No, it's good.
like every gripe I have with every event, like I think off the top of my head in order of like least to most annoying, naming every idea I have to fix it. I'm fucking obsessed, dude. I'm insane. I'm crazy. So I have more stuff like that. The problem is I didn't know if the format was correct. JSAT seemed to like it, but he didn't see me drawing the yellow man with line of sights. I need to show chat what I've made for, and then I really need to go.
Yeah.
I've done this abomination. I swear it makes sense and it has text accompanying it to explain what it means. But basically, I want someone at Fatshark to see this and be inspired. And
They will.
and I just don't want to do like a full document on every event in the game until like I know that there's at least some fucking interest for it.
No, but that's actually like a really good diagram though, because it shows exactly like I can immediately interpret he is controlling 3 separate sightlines from one position.
Yes. And the purple is potential drop downs for the upper zone, and the red line is the new ledge that you need to play around. It's
the Levant. The olive oil.
Do not talk about the tunnel snakes, man. The tunnel snakes rule, alright. And Jews rock.
Smooches,
Anyway.
smooches. Good luck, and I'll have a great time and enjoy
Thank you,
Darktide.
dude. Thank you. Always
miss
so
him
nice to have
already.
crowd. Oh, me too. I'm gonna go bust, brothers.
Oh yeah, it's time.
Thank you for staying, for powering through, dude. That Sycorax run,
It's not even good enough to be uploaded.
six,
Alright.
like fucking 700k damage, dude. It's like that one Ilveg we did on Power Matrix where nothing spawned. I don't understand, man.
Like you either get killed instantly by the spawn grab, or you get a boring run.
Yeah, it's cringe. Cringe is the word. Anyway, gamer.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, brother. I'm thinking this one we're gonna be cutting out the part before the crab talk, and I'm gonna be uploading this like not just as a VOD, but like as a just as a separate video.
My beloved thinks the streamer is an asshole that knows nothing about anything.